Welcome. Welcome to January Books with Bella, the first Books with Bella of 2024. I can't believe it. I don't remember when I started doing these streams. I think it was halfway through 2023. So we haven't completed a full year, but it feels really cool to be entering a new year with this stream series thing. Okay. Anyways, if you haven't been here before for a Books with Bella stream, this is a monthly stream that I do where I talk about books mainly, basically exclusively. I typically go through all of the books that I read the month before. I tell you what I think about them. Top level thoughts. I keep that part of stream and all parts of Books with Bella, I keep very spoiler free. So I'll give you my thoughts on books. I'll tell you a little bit what the general themes are, or maybe who I would recommend a book to, but I do not go over plot details just because I really like to read books without knowing a whole lot about them. And so I want to make that an option for people who also have that preference. Also, if you prefer to know a lot about a book before you read it, there are tons of resources that you can use to go read about it. So I'm just not one of them. So I'll tell you a little bit about the books that I read the month before, and also what I have on my TBR for the current month. But this stream, I am also doing a big a reading wrap up of 2023. I want to tell you about some of my favorite books of 2023 and some other fun categories. I basically have I don't know how to, I was looking for the word. It's not an award. It's but you know how if you watch awards, there's different categories. It's the whatever. I'm doing sort of that, but with books of 2023. So I have my favorites, some of my favorites from book club, books that made me cry the most, and there's a bunch of other categories. Huge thank you to my friends in Discord who suggested some categories. But yeah, we're gonna do that. And I'm really excited. I don't know why I'm so nervous today. I've been doing these for so long, and for some reason today I'm oh my god, I have to talk about my thoughts on books. Anyways, since we have kind of a special one today, our order today is going to be, first we're starting with the books that I read in December of 2023. So we'll just do regular last month's reads. Then we're going to do our big 2023 wrap up. Then we'll do my January TBR. So yeah. Also, one of my favorite things about the Books with Bella streams are that these are a really good opportunity for all of us together to talk about books. So if you have read any of the books that I've read and you want to share your thoughts, you are welcome to. If you have similar books that you want to recommend, or if you have questions, feel free, talk as much or as little as you want. You also don't have to say anything and I'll just keep rambling about books. That's fine too. But don't feel you're not able to interject with what books you've been reading. So I'd love to hear about what books y'all are getting into lately. Anyways, let's talk about last month's books. Also, if you are hanging out, if you'd like to follow along, I have a website where I post about, I post basically an accompanying post for each Books with Bella stream. So there's one up now. If you do !books, you can get a link to my website in Twitch chat. But I have a list of my December reads and January reads there. So if you'd like to follow along and actually see what I'm talking about, you can. Ren he's still in his little spot that's just on the corner of my desk over here, but he's eyes fully closed, just sitting there, falling asleep. Okay. Anyways, in December, I'm literally using my own website because I have everything recapped really nicely there. Hi, Ernesto. Welcome in. Welcome in. We're doing some book chatting. I'm about to get started talking about the books that I read last month. So you have great timing. Thanks for hanging out. So last month I read 5 books. Also, this was huge because last Books with Bella stream, which was in December, I ended it basically telling y'all that I was in a reading slump. So I spent a lot of some of October and most of November just feeling really meh about reading. I was really struggling to get into books, struggling to talk about books, and just I don't know, just really not I don't know, just not into it with books. It was really a bummer time because I love reading. But I definitely ended my reading slump. I think what I needed, I went on a little vacation in December. I took some time off and visited my partner's family in Texas, and I think like the change of scenery and being like elsewhere, I think it really helped me just get back into books. I feel like I just needed a little bit of a change, a little time to like switch things up. And I suspect that I think going into my reading slump, I was finding myself choosing a lot of other things instead of reading in my free time. So I think like here at home, in my home where I live, I have so many different distractions. Like I have a bunch of video games I can play. I have my TV where I can watch whatever TV I want. And like I feel like I kept finding that I was choosing those activities instead of reading in my free time. And when I was traveling, my partner and I were staying with his family for 2 weeks. And so most of my distractions were gone. Like I didn't have my gaming PC with me, so I couldn't play games. And I wasn't gonna like sit and watch TV in someone else's house. I mean, not that we didn't watch any TV. I just wasn't like, anyways, so I kept, in any free time that I had, I kept reaching for my books. And I think that really helped me. One, it helped because I had fewer distractions. That helped me like really get back into reading. And two, I think because I had more time for reading, it made me remember how much I enjoy spending time reading. So like that continued, and I've been reading a lot more since getting back. So anyways, reading slump officially ended. I had a pretty good December. I didn't read a ton of books because I feel like I was reading only a little bit at the beginning of the month, and then I started reading a lot more towards the end when I was away on vacation. But I did read 5 books. Let's see. 2 of them were ARC books. So I had like advanced copies that I got for free. Thank you, NetGalley, in exchange for writing reviews. So I read 2 ARCs. 1 book was a graphic novel and 1 book was an audiobook. So I had like a good mix of different kinds of books, which I think also helped. But yeah, so I'll tell you about them now. That's the whole point of this. So the first book that I read in December was Yours for the Taking by Gabrielle Korn. And this was an ARC. And this, like, I feel like going into this book, I didn't really know, I wasn't totally sure what to expect because I didn't know very much about it at all. I picked this book, this like ARC to read just because it had like a queer romance, and like the things that I knew about it going into it were like queer and feminism. And so I was sort of like, oh, okay, that sounds cool. Oh, and dystopian. It has like a dystopian theme. And I really like dystopian books, so I thought maybe it would be a good try. But I think dystopian can often be super hit or miss for me. And also sometimes books, I don't know, like I didn't really know what to expect going into it. I was intrigued, but I just wasn't sure if I would love it. And I loved it. I gave this 4.5 stars. I really, really, really liked it. It was a very like, it was sort of like an extreme feminist take on the end of the world, but also problematic, but like intentionally so. So it wasn't like, the book was making a commentary on problematic white feminism, basically. So it was like the most extreme version of white feminism, but also, oh, it's the end of the world. And it was really, really interesting. I thought it was just like such an interesting concept. And I think like it was just like a fun thought experiment of like, what if we took the sort of problematic foundation of white feminism, which can often be really like exclusionary and mostly focuses on benefiting white women only, white cis women only. What if we took that and like took it to its extreme? Like, what would that mean? What would be the problems? Like, how would that be bad? It was just really, really interesting. I really liked this. Would definitely recommend to anyone who likes dystopian novels, or like feminist commentary, I guess. I thought it was really cool. I will say, I feel like The ending, like most of the book was like really strong in its feminist take and very like intense, like a pretty big commentary. And then the ending I felt like fell slightly flat. Like I think there were some things that the author could have pushed even harder on and didn't. It was almost like she pulled some punches. I don't know how to explain that better. And I sort of wish she just like went for it, if that makes sense. I know I'm being vague. It's because I don't want to spoil or anything. But it was really, really good. Also, this book, it spans like, I don't know, like 20 or 30 years of time or something. I don't remember the exact dates, but it spans like a really large like span of time, which I thought was really cool, and I liked that. And it was just like an interesting, dystopian books are so interesting to me because I really like that like science fiction take on like how could we survive the end of the world. And so I really liked it. It was super cool. So would recommend. That was the first book that I read in December. And I also went into this, I had like a sort of like deadline to finish this so that I could submit a review. And because of that deadline, I was really feeling like I might not finish this book because I felt like the pressure just like wasn't going to go well with my reading slump. But surprise, it was great. It like sucked me in. I read it really quickly and I really liked it. So check it out. Also, this one was published on December 5th. So it is out. If you'd like to read it, you can. Hi, Radders. Welcome in. Second book that I read last month was a graphic novel. I think I picked this one up in maybe November and I read like the first few pages of it and I just didn't get into it, which was not because of the book. It was literally just because I was struggling to get into reading in general. I was like very much, Kitty, could you not? Sorry. I was very much in a reading slump when I first read like literally 5 pages of this. And I immediately put it down and was like, wait, I need to come back to this when I'm like really ready to read. So I did. In December, I picked this one back up. It is called Clementine, Book 1 by Tillie Walden. It's a graphic novel. Tillie Walden is one of my absolute favorite graphic novel authors and illustrators. Just like so cool. They wrote one of my favorite, maybe my favorite graphic novel, On a Sunbeam. It's incredible. Highly recommend checking it out. See, look. I just want you to, oh. Okay, he's trying to make me a liar. Usually he tries to munch on these, but okay. Anyways. Okay, he's finally settled a little bit. Anyways, Tillie Walden, really incredible. This is an interesting one because it is set in the Walking Dead universe, and I think it is based on a character that is in the like Telltale game of Walking Dead. I only watched maybe like the first half of season 1 of the Walking Dead show. I've never read the Walking Dead comic books. I think they're comic books. And I've never played the game. So I know very little about the Walking Dead, but I picked this book up not as a Walking Dead fan, but as a Tillie Walden fan. And I think it still like is great. So I think that there were probably parts of this book that I didn't totally like pick up on that might have referenced stuff like in the game, for instance, and I just didn't know because I've never played the game. But I found it was still like really, really enjoyable, and I really liked it, and I would recommend. I really liked the character, and also just like all of the characters. It's great. I also like, I really like zombie stuff. So anyways, I really liked this one. I have a physical copy of this book. However, I brought it with me. I finished it when my partner and I were visiting his family, and I actually lent it to my partner's mom to read. So I hope she likes it. She was like intrigued by graphic novels, and really likes The Walking Dead. So she's got my copy. I hope she likes it and doesn't super hate it. It has a couple of like quite emotional moments, but it's also very much like young people surviving in a really hostile world and helping one another out, which is pretty wholesome and sweet. So I really liked it, would recommend. But yeah, so this one was a graphic novel. I will say that it wasn't my number one most favorite of Tillie Walden's graphic novels. Was still great, loved it, but I think there are just others that I love even more. Like, it's a really high bar, but I would absolutely recommend it. It's really cute. Yeah, I think Ariel, I think you'd like it. I don't remember if you have it. Anyways, also, so this is Clementine book 1. I think book 2 is out now, I believe, or will be soon. I don't remember specifically, but there's more than one. So yeah, that's cool. Also, I wanted to read a graphic novel last month because we talked a lot about graphic novels being like a good, like something that's really helpful if you're trying to get out of a reading slump. So if you're looking for a graphic novel to get you out of a reading slump, there's one. Right, Kitty? Are you looking for a graphic novel to get you out of a reading slump? He looked back at me. I don't know why. Anyways. Okay, the next book that I read is, excuse me. The next book that I read is another ARC. So this is another like advanced copy that I got for free in exchange for an honest review. This one is out. This one was published on January 2nd. So this one is also out now if you'd like to read it. It's called Cupid's Revenge by... I should have looked up the pronunciation for the author's name and I didn't. But I think it's Vibeke Brueggemann. This is another one that I picked up or like signed up to read knowing very little about, other than I think the cover is so beautiful. Like, I think the cover is just like so cool. I don't know. I really like the art style and it just is really cool to me. And also this is another one that was mentioned like queer characters and stuff. So I was like, yeah, I'll read a queer book for sure. So anyways, I really did not know much going into this. And the first like chapter of it, I read the first chapter and I was like, this book is not going to be for me. I just know that this is not going to be the book for me. Because right out of the gate, it's like theater kid vibes. It's like this kid who like drags, and by kid, I mean high school student. I think they're like, I don't even remember. I think they're maybe 17. But it's this kid who drags his best friend into like attending a theater audition with him, you know? And from that, and like, just from that alone, I was like, this doesn't feel like the book for me. Not that there's anything, not that that's a bad thing, but that sometimes books that have big like theater kid vibes, I just don't relate to because I didn't have that experience as a youth. So anyways, first chapter, I was like, uh-oh. But I really liked the characters, and so I kept reading, and also I just, like, I don't know, I've been wrong before, and I was wrong again, because this book was phenomenal. The characters were phenomenal. The theater is not like high school theater, it's like community theater with old people and young people and weirdos in the best way possible. Like, it was so... And community theater, that's my jam. This, I'm still thinking about how much I loved this book. It is so good. Pick this up if you like queer people, queer stories. Specifically, this one has a sapphic story. If you like community theater, and also it takes place in like London area, and for some reason I just found it really charming the way all of the characters like get around by train, which if you're from not America, you're probably like, duh, I don't know. But where I live, like the idea of just like hopping on the train, I don't know, like that's not a thing where I live. We have to drive everywhere. So it was just really charming. I will say potentially check the content warnings on this one. Well, I mean, this isn't like a spoiler. They mention it in the first chapter. The main character, her family has a grandfather move in who has who's like beginning to show signs of dementia, basically. So just like a content warning that exists in the book. It's definitely a theme of the book, but I I'm not one to say whether or not it was handled right, just because I don't think I have the experience for that. But I liked the way that storyline progressed. But yeah, I loved this book. Like, absolutely recommend this book. I can't even explain it. It was just really sweet. It had a lot of like, also sometimes I struggle with books that are about teenagers because I'm not a teenager anymore, in case you didn't know. And so sometimes like teenager problems are no longer relatable to me. And so I'm just sort of like, okay. But something about this book, like, sorry, I'm just moving my camera a little. Something about this book, like the teenagers did have what I would categorize as teenager problems, which as an adult, you're like, okay, teenager. But it was handled so well in a way that made the problems not trivial, but also still trivial. Like, I can't explain it, but it was just good. It was really, really good. Highly recommend. Loved this book. Definitely pick it up. This seems like something I'd like. I think you would like this. It had like, it was, to me, it was like the absolute best theater vibes I have ever encountered in a book. It made me want to do some silly community theater thing. Like, I can't even explain it. It was just really sweet. Highly recommend. Like I said, this one was published January 2nd, so it just came out like a week. I can't do math. A week and some change ago. Yeah, really cool. And also, I just love the cover. Anyways, okay, loved that one. The next one that I read was actually our book club selection. So this was our December book club selection. We discussed it in book club towards the end of December, so we already had our little discussion for this. Sorry for my sniffle. This one is Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed. So this one was suggested by Ariel. And I will say it is dark, which I sort of knew going into it, but it got quite dark. It was dark, but I really, really liked this one. It was like creepy and kind of unsettling, but also really, really beautiful. We had some really good conversation about it in book club. And also Ariel pointed out a lot of like things that I didn't notice while reading it. So I guess I didn't know this, but Ariel pointed this out to me. It's a retelling of a grim fairy tale story, which I don't know much about. And that was like, it's like very much like dark fairy tale. It's really, really good. Yeah, I feel like this one sort of caught me by surprise because, how do I explain it? I got very caught up in the fantasy of it. And it was so interesting to go between like this kind of incredible magical world, and also like really dark stuff, if that makes sense. It really threw my brain for a loop. Also, hi Sunday, welcome in. Hello, Snowy Windy. It is snowy windy here. So yeah, this one, I don't know. I feel like I'm glad that we had a book club. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm trying really hard not to spoiler anything. I think that the thing that I found really satisfying about this book was that it stayed true to, like, it was a really sad story and it didn't pretend to not be. Like, sometimes I feel this is just me being such a bummer. Sometimes I feel like sometimes stories are sad, but then they have to be happy. And that bugs me. Like, sometimes I just want to let a sad story be sad. And it bugs me when books are like, but here's the happy ending, here's the silver lining. And this book had happy moments, don't get me wrong, but like it just sort of let a sad story have sad stuff. And I really appreciated that. And I feel like it sort of weighed on me, but also was really like, it just felt right. I don't know how to explain better. but I really liked it. I would recommend, I think, be prepared for sad, and also check the content warnings on this because it did have some pretty heavy content. So just go into it with open eyes. But I really liked it. Did we do the genre stats yet? No, not yet. We're doing my December books first so that we can all be completely caught up on everything that I read last year. And then we're going to do the big 2023 wrap up, which I'm very excited and nervous for. I also appreciate when a book is sad and doesn't apologize for it. Yes. And and I think also because this was very much like magical fairy tale stuff. I just liked how heartbreaking and sad it was. Is that terrible of me? Ooh. But I really liked it. Would recommend. Just be prepared. Okay. And then the last, this is going to look so silly going from the book that I just talked about to this, but I think it will make sense. The last book that I read, of the year, the last book of December was Crazy Rich Asians by Kevin Kwan. And I actually listened to this one on audiobook. I started and finished this while I was traveling. I wanted an audiobook just for I don't know, I just love an audiobook, but I really wanted a just silly happy audiobook. This was very much like a palate cleanser type of book for me, where I wanted something that I wouldn't have to think about very hard, that would have interesting and fun characters, but mostly would just make me happy and be silly, you know? And this was definitely that. It was just fun and silly, and it had some drama, but it was very surface level silly, and I really enjoyed it. I think this book was recommended to me by a friend when I was trying to find books that were very just fun and silly and wouldn't be big thinker books, just fun, silly. I've said fun and silly a million times now, but I was asking for recommendations for fun and silly books, and I got this one as a recommendation. And I also remember seeing, I think they made a movie of it either last year or the year before, and the movie just looked fun and silly and extravagant. So anyways, I really liked this book. I feel there were parts of it, I don't know. Sometimes when I read books, I like to think about them. Also, hi, Robin, welcome in. Sometimes when I read books, I like to think about them very critically. And I think what was done well in the storytelling, and what characters were developed well, and did the ending make sense based on everything that I read in the book. And I like to analyze them. I did not analyze this book. I didn't think about it at all. I literally just let it go into my ears, into my head, and then right back out. It felt like watching reality TV, or watching, there wasn't a whole lot to think about. And that is not in any way a complaint at all. That was exactly what I was looking for. And this just made me happy. And I really loved all of the characters. I just really, really loved it. The movie was really good. Okay. I like that. I think I'd like to watch the movie. I actually started watching the movie, but didn't finish it. Sorry for my sniffle. But yeah, I really liked it. I don't think I have much more to say. It was great on audiobook also. I don't remember who the narrator was, but it was great. Anyways, that brings us to the end of the books that I read in December. Literally all good books, no complaints about any of them. I think I was trying to make sure in December that I exclusively read books that I would like and that would make me happy, because I didn't coming off of a reading slump. Coming off of a reading slump was kind of a delicate spot for me. I didn't want to sort of get unlucky with a book that I really didn't like. But I got really lucky and they were all really great. So think you'll read the second one? I actually did not know there was a second one. I'm listening. Oh, there's 3. The second one is called China Rich Girlfriend, and the third one is called Rich People Problems. I didn't even know. I love that I position myself as I have put myself in this place. I'm talking about books. Not that I'm an expert, but that like I'm presenting information about books and I have no idea what I'm talking about half the time. Love it. I didn't know that at all. I would absolutely read the other two, especially in moments like this, in moments like the reason that I read that one is that I just I needed something light and easy and that I wouldn't have to think a lot about. And I feel like that comes up a lot. I feel like I'm going to keep the other two in the back of my mind for when I need a palate cleanser. Have any of y'all read those books? Did you like the second and third? Well, okay, yeah, wait, let me ask first. Will I be disappointed if I read the rest of the trilogy? Also, welcome in, Myth Wizard. Hello. Thank you for being here, not first. I appreciate it. How are you doing? Hope everyone's having a good day. But yeah, that's everything that I read. I liked it a lot. I feel like I did a great job. Did y'all have any favorite books that you read in December? Also, this is my mug. I realize I haven't showed it to you yet. Can I offer you an egg? This is Carla. But yeah, did y'all have any favorite books of December? Did you also, if anyone else also did any traveling or holiday vacation stuff, did you have a similar experience where it was easier or maybe harder to read when you were traveling? I didn't like how one particular plot line was handled, so I didn't really like the third one. Okay, interesting. Sorry for my sniffles. Good to know. That's good to know. The pace changed dramatically in the second book, and I haven't read the third. Interesting. Maybe I won't read the others. Maybe I will. It's hard to say. I feel like I really liked the first one, and I didn't. Sometimes with I didn't even know there was another one. There was definitely more to the story at the ending of the first book, but I didn't feel like I needed it. Sometimes when I finish a book in a trilogy, I get to the end and I'm like, oh my gosh, what happens next? I can't wait to find out. But I feel like finishing this book, I was like, nice. I don't need more. I would be happy with more, but I wasn't like, I need to know what happens. I know it's all the rage right now, but I read Fourth Wing in December and I loved it. Okay. I've heard a lot of really good things about Fourth Wing. But then I've heard a lot of really mixed things about the second book. And I've heard a couple of not great things about the author. So there have been so many folks that have been like, you have to read Fourth Wing. It's so great. You have to read it. And then there have been some folks that are like, if you read Fourth Wing, you'll need to read Iron Flame or whatever. And when you read Iron Flame, you're going to be bummed. Which also, just to clarify, I'm regurgitating other people's opinions. I don't know anything about Fourth Wing. I don't know. And if you loved it, and if you love the second book, that's great. I don't have an opinion. I say this every single time we do these streams, but I will keep saying it every time we do these streams. The really cool thing about reading is that we can and should and do have different opinions. And that's super okay. It's great and good for us to like different things with books. So I'm reading Iron Flame now and I don't hate it so far. That's good. I feel like also it's one of those things where I think people's opinions of Fourth Wing and Iron Flame are really there's so much on social media about them right now that it's hard to parse out what the actual book is like, you know what I mean? Versus what's just all this shouting on the internet. I read so much while traveling. December was my largest reading month. Heck yes. I feel like I didn't read a ton because the first half of December I basically didn't read and I was just preparing to travel and anxious and making a million TikToks and whatever. But the second half I read a bunch. It felt just easier to read while traveling. Taking time off work at the end of December rejuvenated my will to read. Might have read more books in December than the rest of my year combined. I love that. I love that. Also, hi, Maury. Thank you for being here, not first. Hello, you icon. It's nice to see you. Enjoy your lurk. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I'm in the middle of Station 11. Mixed feelings about it. Interesting. I'm curious to hear what you think when you finish it. I read Station 11 earlier this year and I really, 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 really enjoyed it. Because I thought it was very I thought it was a very interesting take. Like, my favorite thing about Station 11 was not even necessarily the plot or the characters or anything. It was that in like the focus of Station 11, I felt was like this group of people who in an apocalypse, rather than exclusively focusing on survival, were focusing on art. And I thought that was really compelling. Sage deserves to always have time off of work. Yes. To read. Yes. Huge agree. Everyone deserves. I wish that actually, I feel like this, I wish that you could take time off of work just because you want to have a day to read, which I think technically you probably could do. And if your boss is cool, you can just like take a day and not explain why. But normalize taking a day off work just because. Hi, Morg. Welcome in. I hope you're having a really good day. Good morning. Hello. We just wrapped up talking about the books that I read in December of 2023. And now we're talking about the books you all read in December of 2023. It sounds like a lot of us had a pretty good reading month, largely because of like time off work, traveling, all that jazz. So Ren is like laying where he has his hips to one side and then his head to the other. So he's like, oh, he moved. Yeah, was that uncomfy? It didn't look very comfy, buddy. You're so sweet. Anyways. Y'all are officially caught up on all of the books that I read last year. Well, I guess that's not true because I think I only started doing Books with Bella like halfway through the year. So I guess there are some books that I read at the beginning of the year that y'all don't know about maybe. But we are going to do a 2023 reading wrap up quite soon here in just a few minutes. I'm going to get that started. And basically, yeah, we're going to talk about all the books. Welcome in. I'm so happy to have you here. Welcome to our first, maybe annual, who knows, Books with Bella reading wrap up, where I tell you about the books that I have been reading, enjoying in over the last year. Can you tell I'm so nervous? Okay, I'm a mess. I'm just a little guy. Yeah, okay, let's get started. Also, if we haven't met, hello, my name is Bella. I like to read. Every month I do a Books with Bella stream where I tell you about the books that I read the previous month, about the books that I'm hoping to read the current month. And this is a special first time ever big year recap stream. I came up with some categories of books that I wanted to talk about from the past year. So some of my favorite books, some of my least favorite books, stuff like that. And then also my really, really wonderful Discord community came up with some additional suggestions. So thank you, Discord friends, for some of these categories that you provided. As always, this is a stream that is open for like chatting and discussion. So we have a pretty active chat over on Twitch. Y'all are totally welcome to tell me what books you have been reading. If you've read a book that I've read and you want to share your thoughts, I would love to hear them. The only thing that I ask is that we keep this chat spoiler free. So general thoughts on books, vibes about books, totally good, but let's not spoil any endings or any massive pieces of plot, stuff like that. Sound good? Eclipse, welcome in. Great to see you. Hope you're having a good day. Let's go. Okay. So this is my first time doing a presentation like this, and I'm like ridiculously excited about it. So I hope you like it. First up, we're talking Storygraph stats. So if you have not seen Storygraph before, Storygraph is this really cool website that you can use to track your reading stats, stuff like that. I switched over from Goodreads to Storygraph like a couple of years ago, and I really like it. So that's where all of this like statistical information is going to come from. So in 2023, I read a total of 74 books, which is a lot. And my average rating of my books was 4.47, which is pretty high, I will say. That's like, I enjoyed most of the books that I read, which I'm kind of impressed by. I feel like this is the year that I really honed in my understanding of reviews. So I actually gave way fewer 5-star reviews than I have in previous years. So I was kind of impressed to see such a high number. But basically, this is the year that I learned what reviews mean to me. So 1 star means not only did I not like it, it like bothered me. Like something about it made me mad. That's what a 1-star review is. A 2-star, I didn't like it. It's as simple as that. 3-star is it was good. I liked it. I wouldn't reread it, might not recommend it, but I did like it. 4-star, I liked it. I will probably talk about it. I will probably recommend it. It was good. Like 4-star is like a solid, dang, that was a good book, you know? I tried to cater these more towards like 3 being average and not like 5 being average. But I would prefer to read more books that I like. So anyways, I feel like this tells me, anyways, and then 5-star is like 5-star books are so good that I will never stop talking about them. If you're my friend, you'll hear me talk about these books all the time. You will not escape me talking about these books. That's what 5-star means. So anyways, I think this number, rather than telling me that I rated books too high, I am choosing to believe this number means that I found the types of books that I really like. You know what I mean? Like I figured out my type of book and I got better at like reading books that I will like. So Storygraph does allow half stars and quarter stars. So you can do like a 3.25, which is really cool. I think I did a lot of like 4-star reviews, a lot of 4.5-star reviews this year, and definitely like not 0 5-star reviews. So anyways, yeah. That was that. Next up, yes, the half star and quarter stars are like where I live. They're very handy. So if you voted, like I posted a little bit earlier, I posted a poll on Twitter where y'all could guess what my top genres of 2023 were. So my top genre, I read almost 40 books categorized with this genre tag on Storygraph. The options in my poll were young adult, LGBTQIA+, fantasy, and romance. 25% of you guessed young adult was my top genre. 66.7% of you guessed LGBTQIA+ was my top genre. 8% of you guessed fantasy, and none of you guessed romance, which is actually pretty funny, but most of you know me very well. Because LGBTQIA+ was my top tagged genre in Storygraph. What happened? Okay, sorry, my presentation refreshed, but not to worry, it's still there and still good, right? We're good? The page just decided it needed to refresh. Anyways, y'all know me. You're right, okay? You got me. LGBTQIA+ was my top tagged genre in Storygraph. I read almost 40 books with the LGBTQIA+ tag, which sort of makes sense because I feel like it's the type of genre that can be multiple other genres. So like I read a lot of LGBTQIA+ romance books and LGBTQIA+ fantasy books, etc. So anyways, I read a lot of queer books this year. Not a surprise. Pretty proud of that, actually. But romance was my third most common category or genre, which actually really did surprise me because previously I have talked about how like I'm super, super picky about romance. And I used to say that I hated romance, which is just objectively false. And I know that now. I'm just a little bit picky about it. But this year was really the year that I like found my groove with romance books and I loved them. I read a lot of romance books and I really, really, really liked a lot of romance books. So GG romance, but also of course, GG queer. Just incredible. Also, welcome in new friends. Thank you so much for the follows. Thank you for joining. We are talking books today. This is our monthly Books with Bella stream where I tell you about books that I've recently read, books that I'm hoping to read soon. And this month is our first ever very special edition reading wrap up where I tell you a little bit about all the books that I read in 2023. So thank you for joining. It is great to have you. Welcome in. Came in with the raid. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Welcome in, Carmen. Hello. But yeah, those are my stats. I'm glad that you all know me. I kept expecting like something else to win in the poll, and then I was like, of course everyone knows that I read queer books. Of course. Of course that's not a surprise for y'all. Okay, next up, this is one of my favorite like things. So a lot of these stats are from my Storygraph 2023 wrap up. So this is a really cool thing that Storygraph does. If you use Storygraph, it'll give you like a wrap up of stats from the year. So including this, which is called the Storygraph, pretty cool. And it's a mood map of your reading. So basically, if you read like emotionally like lighter or heavier books, it'll push the line up or down. So like lighter books push the line up and darker books push the line down. And it is sort of funny that this line ends up just being sort of like in line with the seasons. Like I read darker books in winter, a little bit lighter in February and March, much lighter in April, May, June, July, and August in those like warm summer months. And then I went in on those dark books as the weather got colder. Anyways, I think that's pretty funny. I saw someone share, I think on Twitter, I saw someone share their story graph, and it was just like a red line all the way at the bottom of the graph the entire year, which I thought was pretty funny. But yeah, there's mine. I was kind of impressed by this. I feel like I read a lot of darker, more emotional books this year, but I read a lot of light ones too. So, okay, now it's actual book talk time, book chat. I'm going to tell you about books now. So those were some of my stats. I have a lot more stats if anyone's curious. Like I have a list of all kinds of stuff, but that was just some stuff that I wanted to bring up here. So now, basically, the rest of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is sort of like, I did things in threes because I like that. And I have like categories where I'm going to tell you my three, for instance, top 3 books of the year. And then I have like a ton more categories. So buckle up. I'd like to hear your top 3 as well. But this one was super, super, super hard for me to pick because I read a lot of books that I really, 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 really loved. And I feel like I changed my top 3. Like my top 3, there were like two books that were maybe in like 4th and 5th place that I was constantly like, oh, should I move that up? I don't know. Like I couldn't, it took me so long to decide on this. But this is where I landed. Okay. So I think my number one, like even now I read so many good books this year. Okay. But my number 1 pick of favorite books this year was in fact Crying in H Mart, which I think was also the most emotionally devastating book that I have maybe ever read. But it was phenomenal. Like I feel changed having read it. My heart wasn't prepared to see Crying in H Mart up there. Sorry. That book pulls no punches. Yeah, it's very like, it's so honest and raw that I feel like I have read a lot of like emotional books. I've read a lot of like memoirs that have emotional stories and that cover some really emotional material. This one like couldn't even compare. Like this one was so emotional. I cried so much reading this book and it was incredible. It was so good. I did half and half. So I have the physical book, but I also listened to the audiobook, because the audiobook is read by the author, which is one of my favorite things is like memoirs that are read by the author. Cause so good. But yeah, that one, it broke my heart and it was incredible. Definitely, if you're interested in reading Crying in H Mart, highly recommend it. It's the core focus is grief. So definitely just be aware of that. I think it's kind of, I would absolutely recommend it because it is such like grief is pretty relatable to all of us, unfortunately. And so I think it's really incredible and beautiful to get to read someone's very honest and vulnerable experience of grief, because for me at least, it just made me feel like connected as a human kind of deal, which I think is really important. But it is very tough. It is very honest and very tough and very complex. It's phenomenal. I'm still thinking about it. I'm a streamer just working today, putting a bathroom in. Ooh, nice. Doing plumbing work. Okay, that sounds really tough. I hope it goes well. Yes, I hope it goes well. We recently had to do some plumbing work in my bathroom and I did not do it. I hired someone because I was like, I'm not messing with that. Just added In the Dream House to my TBR. Okay, so In the Dream House is my next in the top 3. In the Dream House is phenomenal, like truly phenomenal. And it was a book that I read really, really early in the year. I borrowed this book from a friend and I loved it so much that I subconsciously tried to steal it from her. So I have this book still. I borrowed it from a friend, and if I borrow books, I don't put them on my bookshelf. I keep them in a separate spot so that I know okay, I have to give these books back. And the other day I had 3 books that I borrowed from a friend and I put them in a pile and I was like, okay, I have to remember to give these 3 books back to my friend because they're not mine, they're hers. And I couldn't find the 3rd book. And then I realized it's because I put In the Dream House on my shelf because I need it. So In the Dream House is also a memoir. And it focuses, this is another pretty emotional one. So again, check content warnings, just go into it with open eyes so that you're not surprised by some of the content, because it's emotional and it's a bit dark, but it covers an experience that is not often talked about with queer relationships that really ought to be. And this book really discusses how for queer people, people in queer relationships, there's this expectation that because queer relationships are not the norm, or not the most common in society, all queer relationships have to be good. We have to only have good things to say. We're not allowed to complain because it has to be good. I don't know how to explain that better. And it really talks about how that's a problem. This book was incredible. It's also a writing style that I really haven't seen before. So instead of consistent chapters that are consistent length with I don't know the right words. I'm not an expert. But instead of standard paragraphs or a consistent style of prose, it has each chapter has a totally unique structure almost. Some of them are long, some of them are quite short. They're written really differently. And instead of a sort of linear storytelling, it jumps all over the place, which makes a lot of sense for the content that's covered in the book. And I felt to be very relatable, and it almost validated some of my own personal experiences. So I loved this one so much. It feels like one of those books that everyone should read. And it was incredible. It was just incredible. I loved it so much. That's awesome, Carmen. That's so cool. In the Dream House is in my top 10 to read this year because of how much you said you loved it. There are a lot of books. This is, how I was earlier I was talking about what different star ratings mean to me. This is a book that I rated 5 stars because it's one of those books that I will not stop talking about. I will if you're my friend, you will hear me recommend this book to you because it's so phenomenal. It's really, really, really good. And I highly recommend it to any other friends in the LGBTQIA plus community because I feel like it is just very important for us. But also it is important for folks who have experienced difficulties in relationships. It is important for folks that want to be good allies to people of the queer community. And it's just phenomenally written. So cannot say enough good things. Then my 3rd in my top 3 was On a Sunbeam by Tillie Walden. This was, I think, one of the first books that I read of 2023. And I think it was, I remember reading it in early 2023 because I wanted to get out of a reading slump kind of deal. Like I just wanted something that would be like cozy and easy to read. And one of my favorite like I felt, first of all, this book is beautiful. It is a graphic novel. It is incredible. It's the first book by Tillie Walden that I ever read. The art, incredible. The storytelling, incredible. It's just such a wonderful book. But also it did this like really cool thing that where like without even addressing it or noticing it or thinking about it, I felt like so at home in all of the characters in this book. And it felt so like I was a queer book full of queer people, but it didn't even have like, but I didn't even notice until suddenly I was like, why do I feel affirmed by this book? I don't know. It was so good. It's really phenomenal. Cannot recommend it enough. It's so good. Also, yeah, Ariel, thank you for like bringing this up. Today, we are focused on talking about books. And as always, chat, y'all are welcome to like chat about anything you want in chat. It's all good. I mostly, just for the sake of my brain, I'm going to keep the conversation focused on books. But I am always so happy to hear your thoughts on different books. So if you have read any of these, if you did or did not like them, I would love to hear about it. Again, without spoilers, please. If you had top favorite books of 2023, like so we're going through a bunch of different categories. This is the first category, my top 3 books of the year. If you have books that were your top 3 of the year, I would love to hear about those as well. Y'all are welcome to share as much as you'd like. Also, no pressure. But yeah, we're doing books. We're doing books today. I've only heard good things about all of these authors, especially Tillie Walden. Tillie Walden is incredible. Also, like Michelle Zauner, incredible. Like all of these authors did, like all 3 of these books were really distinct and unique. And all of these authors, I think, left a mark on me because of their writing style or storytelling style, you know? Also, welcome in, new friend. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. I did the same with On a Sunbeam. Hello. Yes, I knew what it was, and then my brain was like, hang on. I love graphic novels for getting out of a slump, and it was a fantastic read, slump or not. Yes. Yeah, it also, not only did it help me out of a reading slump, it was like a very queer hug that I needed. It was so affirming, and I really loved it. I really, really loved it. So, anyways, those are my top 3. Next... We're going to switch exact opposite direction, and I'm going to tell you my bottom 3. So also, I would like to point out that of my bottom 3, my third bottom 3, which they go from like I'm pointing somewhere that doesn't matter. On the left side is my like least favorite to like the worst to the not as worst. Does that make sense? And I would like to point out that like I did not hate The Only One Left. Like I actually really enjoyed this book until the ending. But like I'm kind of impressed that I really only had 2 books that I read this year that I'm mad about. Do you know what I mean? Don't worry about typos. You're totally good, Mark. Don't worry about it. Don't even worry about it. Yeah, and the other 2 I like distinctly remember complaining about on stream. But The Only One Left, like I didn't even hate it. The ending really made me annoyed. So that's why it's in my bottom 3, just for the ending. So, okay, let's get into it. 1, The Genius Plague. This was a science fiction thriller book about a mushroom plague that infects people's brains. I don't know how to explain that better, which sounds incredible. It sounds like the exact kind of thing that I'd be interested in, and I was so jazzed about it. I was like, this is so cool. I read it with my partner, and I can't even remember if I liked the plot because the main character was so insufferable to me. Like the main character made me so mad that I couldn't get into the book. I think this was a specific character that like grated on me because of specific things, and that might not be the experience that you get. You might really like this book or not be annoyed by the character that I was. So as always, whenever I am telling you something that I didn't like or something that I did like, if you have a different opinion, not only is that okay and encouraged, but like that's how it works, right? Like books are art, and books are like, we're all gonna have different opinions, and that's totally okay. But yeah, The Genius Plague, the main character was incredibly full of himself, and he also like constantly made, usually not out loud, but like to himself, comments on whether or not the women that he was encountering were like pretty or not. And it made me so annoyed. I was like, sir, can you please stop talking? So anyways, that was my number one worst book of the year. Sorry, David Walton, but it didn't hit. I'm so sorry. Riley Sager kind of struggles with endings. Yes. He tells great stories, but I hear so many mixed reviews, particularly about the endings. Yeah, this is so Ariel and I buddy read. I don't know if we buddy read it or we just read it around the same time and then talked about it. But we both read The Only One Left, and like I'm so frustrated because the book was so good. The characters were so interesting. I loved the setting. I loved the storytelling. And then we got to the end, and I was like, "Are you kidding? Like, really? True? This is where we're going? This?" Like, it made me so mad. I think the reason that it's on my bottom 3 list is not because the book was bad, but because the ending did so much damage to the rest of the book. Like, Riley, can we talk? What's the deal? And I have felt similarly about, I've read, I think 2 of his other books, and I felt basically the exact same way about the endings. I was like, really? Huh? Anyways. So my number 2 least favorite book of this past year was Madam by Phoebe Wynne. And I also complained about this book when I read it. I should have DNF'd this book because it just wasn't for me. I think the reality is it just wasn't for me, you know? This one was categorized as mystery thriller, dark academia. But in my opinion, the main focus in this book was just like misogyny, and but it wasn't creative or good enough for it to be worth having an entire book about misogyny. Like, I think when we talked about it on stream, we talked about like, there's this really great story. I think it's a book, but also a movie called The Stepford Wives. And the whole point of that is misogyny, right? Like, that's a story about misogyny. But it's super unique. It's super good. It's really interesting. It's so well done that it's okay with me to have an entire book about misogyny. But I feel like if you're going to do an entire story where the main focus is misogyny, it has to be great, right? Because like that story's been told. I live in that story. I'm so sick of it. So anyways, this one was a miss for me, and it made me mad also. And then, yeah, Only One Left. It was so great until the 90% mark. His agents just need to make him cut out like 3 twists and we'd be good. Yes. And this is exactly when Ariel and I read this. This is what we talked about. We were like, this had 3 too many twists. Like, what are you doing? Anyways, those are my least favorite books of 2023. Again, huge caveat. If you read these books and you loved them, that is great. And I also really do enjoy hearing when people like books that I disliked. I actually really like hearing about that because sometimes getting to hear someone else's perspective makes me have a different view on a book or really anything, because sometimes there are just things that I didn't miss that kind of like went over my head, things like that. So I'm always curious. So please, again, I'm not trying to say that my opinion is right. It is bound to happen that we like things different amounts. But yeah, these books made me mad. They're not on my bottom because they were bad, but because they made me so annoyed because of specific things that I think are specifically annoying to me. That's so valid that 2 of your books on this least favorite list are because of poorly handled misogyny. Yes, it is a delicate and overplayed topic, and it is very hard to do right. Yes. Like The Genius Plague, it had misogyny because the author just like didn't have the main character ever check himself, and it was so annoying. He was so full of himself. And then Madam was just like, what if we imagine a world where misogyny controls things? And it's like, I don't have to imagine that. I don't want to think about that, please. Yeah, it was definitely, it's like, if misogyny is going to play a big part in your story, I think it has to be handled well, or at least creatively. Anyways, those books made me mad. Okay, so yeah, that's my bottom. Oh my gosh. All right, next category is my hottest 3. And by that I mean like spiciest, most romantic, the ones that the like kicking my feet type of books, you know what I mean? Like I mentioned earlier, I feel like this is the year that I really found romance books that I like. I have previously been quite picky when it comes to romance, and I literally used to say that I hate romance books. I don't think that's true. I think I was just not reading the right ones for me. And also, like, you will notice a theme here. All 3 of these are pretty queer-focused romance books, so yeah, that helps. So anyways, these are my 3 hottest books of 2023. Full disclosure, all 3 of these books did have spicy scenes. So if you are not a spicy scene reader, don't read these. You probably won't like them, and that's okay. But if you are, maybe check them out. I find my pickiness with romance is that I am a little like, if scenes are too spicy, I become immediately like, ooh, like it just icks me a little bit. But a certain amount of spicy scene I really like. So I'm just picky about them. So number 1, Cleat Cute by Meryl Wilsner. This is cute. Lesbians, sporty lesbians. Yeah. And it's soccer. I loved it. I loved this book. I thought that the spicy scenes were so fun and so spicy. Ooh, great. And who doesn't love soccer playing lesbians, okay? Who doesn't love that? Who would dislike that, okay? And their teammates, and then, yeah, okay. Also, it has like an enemies to lovers vibe, which y'all know I love, so really good. So good. Have you ever read ACOTAR? Hi, Jennifer, welcome in. I have read the first 2 ACOTAR books. I tried reading the 3rd, and I simply could not drag myself through it. I didn't enjoy it, and I will probably not be revisiting them. I found that they weren't for me. Yeah. I thought that the first ACOTAR book was not... I thought it was okay. I liked it, but I didn't really love it. I really, really, really liked the second ACOTAR book. I thought it was like... I just thought it was really fun to read. And I couldn't even tell you what happens in the 3rd one. I couldn't do it. So I know there are a lot of ACOTAR fans, and I am so sorry if our opinions on that book or series do not align. But yeah, it's just not for me. I think my big problem, and I don't want to like spoil or anything, so this is just a general theme that shows up in ACOTAR, is I really struggle with the like, what is that like trope called? I think it's like fated mates trope or something. I really, really personally struggle with that trope. It makes me uncomfortable, and it shows up in ACOTAR kind of a lot. So yeah, those ones are not for me, I think, is what I have settled on after a while of thinking about it. I think it was tough because ACOTAR is really, really popular, and it was recommended to me a lot, and I think that there were parts of, in particular, the second book that I really found quite appealing, but overall it just wasn't for me. A highlight of my reading year was getting to meet Casey McQuiston. I'm so envious. That's so cool. They're so cool. Red, White, Royal Blue is one of my favorite romance books too. It was so good. That book was so good. Obsessed. Casey McQuiston. That's so cool. Morgan, I'm so jealous. Yes, exactly. No one has the exact same taste. It is what it is. I feel like I don't have like a number 1 favorite book of all time. I think a book that I constantly talk about that is probably my closest to number 1 favorite is This Is How You Lose the Time War, because it is like it's in my brain forever. It's just like it's just like left such a massive impact on me. I loved that book, which we won't be talking about today. Well, I mean, I'm talking about it right now, but it's not going to show up in my 2023 wrap up because I read it the year before. So otherwise it would be all of the categories. But yeah, so my second hottest book of 2023 was Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. It is the spiciness is so good. I found that I hadn't really read a like gay men romance book that I super connected with before reading this book, but I connected with this one. It was so good, and I loved the characters so much, and it was just phenomenal. I loved it so much. Definitely spicy scenes, but I really liked the spicy scenes. And it was just so sweet. I feel like this was one of those books that I read it and I like couldn't put it down. It was so good. And then my third in my hottest of 2023 was A Shot in the Dark by Victoria Lee. This one was an arc that I read earlier in the year. Yeah, spicy. I really liked the characters. It also had some good like trans rep and a really good trans character in a spicy scene that I thought was handled really well and I really liked, which was very cool. It made me really happy. And I will say about this book that there's more, like, some of both of the main characters in A Shot in the Dark, beyond having this like really, really great romance that I really enjoyed, they also do deal with some sort of heavier and kind of more emotional things in their lives. So this is another one that I would check content warnings for before you give it a read, just in case. But I really loved it. I thought it was so spicy and great. Those boys are so cute and charming. Yeah, the Red, White, and Royal Blue boys. They're so cute and so charming. But yeah, these were my favorite romance spicy scene books of 2023. The books that the books that had me like kicking my feet, you know? I really liked these. If you like romance, I would definitely recommend these for sure. All of these had, like I mentioned at the beginning of this, all of these had spicy scenes. So if you don't like spicy scenes, don't read these. But yeah. Okay, next topic, my top 3 of book club. I think in total I read 10 books for book club in 2023. Our first book club was in February of 2023, and then we skipped November because I was in a reading slump. And also several of us were. It wasn't just me, but I was in a reading slump. So we pushed our November book to December. But these were my top 3 of book club. This was also a really hard list for me to make because I found that I really, 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 really loved all of the books that we read in book club. We read such incredible books. And like huge thank you to everyone who suggested books. So we have a book club. It's in Discord. If you'd like to join, you're totally welcome to. In Twitch chat, you can do !Discord. The Discord is open to anyone 18 years or older, just for safety reasons, so that it's like a little easier for me and my moderators to keep track of things, and like ensure that it's as safe a space as we are able to make. But we had we each month we pick books 3 months in advance, but each month each month we pick a different book to read. We read it at our own pace throughout the month, and then we meet up at the end of the month to discuss the book. And all of those books that we pick are coming from recommendations of folks in book club. So huge thank you to everyone who recommended books. We read books that I probably would not have picked up on my own. And like I loved every book that we read in book club. We had such incredible choices. So thanks, y'all. Anyways, these are my top 3 of 2023 of book club. So the first one was The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi. This book was one of those ones that I almost put in my top 3 of the year. Like it was like so close in the top 3 of the entire year. It was so phenomenal. It's a fantasy book. The storytelling was just like incredible, and just I felt so caught up in the story. The characters were amazing. The main character, Amina, was the coolest character maybe of any book ever. She was phenomenal. I loved reading this book. It was so fun. Just so good. Like, also it was very solid, like solidly like an adventure, like adventurous main character, awesome book. But the main character was, first of all, a woman, great, and also like not a teenager. It was so cool to read a fantasy book with, like, Amina was just the coolest main character. I loved it. Okay. The second one is Genderqueer, which is a graphic novel. It is a memoir by Maya Kobabe, who is genderqueer. And it was like a very, very honest and sort of raw experience, like raw explanation of air experience, understanding their air identity. And it was phenomenal. It was really, really cool. It was one of those books where parts of it were relatable and parts of it weren't, and all of it was so important for me to read. And it was great. I loved it. Hi, Locke. Welcome in. And thanks for the follow. Welcome in, new friends. Hello. I appreciate it. But yeah, Genderqueer was just, it's phenomenal. I think it's one of those books that like everyone should read. I don't know. It was so good. One of my top 3 for 2023. Had so much fun discussing that one in book club. Yeah, and that was another, it was really, really cool discussing that in book club, because I remember it sort of like opened the door for those of us in book club to have some pretty like candid and real conversations with one another about our own experiences, which was like, that's never expected or required. Like, we don't have to come to book club and, you know, confess our deepest secrets to one another. But I think sometimes it's really special to have a community where you are able to have those open and honest discussions with one another. And sometimes you need a nudge, you know, to open up that space. And that book did that for us, which was really cool. I liked that a lot. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I loved that one. The third of my favorite or my top 3 from book club was A Psalm for the Wild-Built by Becky Chambers. This one I really loved. This was science fiction. It's short. It's a very short book, which was really cool. Like, it was really enjoyable. But it was interesting because it felt like sometimes with shorter books, I feel like I'm getting a shorter story. And with this book, I didn't feel that way. I don't know, like, it was succinct. It was so well told, but I didn't feel like I was missing anything, which was really beautiful. But it was science fiction. The main character used they, them pronouns, if I recall correctly. And I really, really liked that. And it was something about this book was so gentle to me. Like, it felt like a hug and like a friend making you a warm cup of tea. And then when you try to say thank you a million times, they're like, don't say thanks. This is what friends do. Like, I can't explain it. It was so gentle and so good. I loved this book. It was incredible. I loved getting to read A Psalm for the Wild-Built with y'all. My partner read it over the holiday and really enjoyed it as well. I still need to pick up the sequel. The sequel is on my to-read list for this year. I'm really excited about the sequel. Cannot recommend this one enough. Restful and wonderful. Yes, restful and wonderful. That's like, I feel like that's such a great way to describe it, Sage. I think like it really was just so... It was so restful. The characters were so sweet. I just loved it. I loved it so much. But yeah, those were I'm taking another sip of water because I've been talking a lot. But those are my top 3 picks of book club. Again, book club is something that we have in Discord. We discuss a different book every single month, and it's one of my favorite things. So thank y'all, book club friends. Thank you so much for joining me over this past year. Okay, next category. 3 that I would read again. So I was thinking about this a lot, and I was trying to, in my mind, understand the difference between what is a book that I would read again versus what is a book I just liked. Do you know what I mean? And I think there is a distinction, right? Like, there are some books that are like so great and you love them and they're phenomenal, but it was still sort of like I don't need to read it again kind of book. And then there are also sometimes books that like weren't maybe your number 1 favorite of all time, but you would read them again because there's like so much going on there, stuff like that. Anyways, I loved all of these books conveniently because I feel like I'm the type of person who probably wouldn't reread a book if I didn't like really love it. But there are reasons why I would reread these. Okay, so Happy Place by Emily Henry. This one was romance. I think I've read maybe 3 Emily Henry books, and I feel like Emily Henry is like very, very hip right now. A lot of people are reading her books a lot. This was hands down my favorite. Definitely, absolutely my favorite Emily Henry book. I feel like this one was just like sweet. I really liked it. I don't want to say too much without spoiling it, but I felt like the romance was very just reasonable and believable, and I really liked it. I almost reread this one in December to get out of my reading slump, but then I just ended up reading other things instead. But it feels like a really good, like, if I wanted to read a book to get out of a reading slump, or if I just wanted to read a book that I'm already familiar with, I would totally pick this one up because I think it would still be enjoyable reading it a second time, you know? Also, I have Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. This one's categorized as a horror book, horror science fiction, which I do think is correct. Like it has horror vibes, but it's not that scary. It is scary, but it's not that scary. And I think also at its core, it's actually a love story. I would totally read this again to sort of pick up on things that I missed the first time that I read it. I think it's a book that has a lot going on, and I do think I would enjoy reading it a second time and sort of like picking apart like what did I miss the first time, or like what else is going on that I just wasn't like ready to pick up on, you know? What is the spice level of Happy Place? I don't remember Happy Place being super spicy. I feel like Emily Henry in general definitely has like spicy scenes, but I feel like her books are not like super full of spicy scenes. If there are any other friends in chat who have read Happy Place or other Emily Henry, please feel free to like weigh in here, because I also haven't read an Emily Henry book in a while. I think I read Happy Place in like middle of summer, so it's been a little while. But I find her books to be like not like, I have never cringed out of an Emily Henry book, which might say something. I feel like there's definitely spicy scenes, but it's not like spicy, constant spicy. I feel like there's a lot of stuff in between, and a lot of like kind of like fade to blacks type scenes where they're not like going like, I feel like there are some spicy scene authors who are like, let me tell you exactly, play by play, moment by moment, exactly what's happening. And that's a no for me. I don't really prefer that. That's not my jam for the most part. Like, I've read a few books that have scenes like that are okay, but for the most part, it starts to get repetitive. And authors, for me, I find that authors just are trying to be too creative in using different words for the same thing. And I'm like, okay, that's enough. I've heard enough. Emily Henry doesn't do that. From what I remember, I feel like her spicy scene style is sort of like more focused on like almost like the feelings of the characters and less about like what's exactly happening in the scene. Does that make sense? They're not smut focused, they're plot focused. There's tension and heat usually, but it's not too graphic. Yes. I feel like what I remember about the spicy scenes are sort of characters being like thinking, you know, narratively about their feelings, and not like, here is a description of what's happening. Does that make sense? Anyways, I'm not a smut fan for the most part. Everyone likes whatever they like. I just personally, like I was talking about earlier, it kind of like icks me out a little. And I really like Emily Henry's books. So hopefully that helps. I hope that answered your question. Ooh-wee. Also, a huge reminder that like, if you're a lover of smut, that's great. I'm so happy for you. Read however you want, whatever you want. Everyone has different preferences. This is not a commentary on what is good or bad reading, but anyways, that's my take. I like the way that she handles spicy scenes. Okay, and then my third on my 3 I would read again list is On a Sunbeam by Tillie Walden, because it is beautiful, first of all. And I think also a thing that I have noticed about myself is that I tend to read graphic novels somewhat quickly because I can. Like, there are fewer words on the page in graphic novels than like a not graphic novel. And so I find my brain is like, okay, I read the words, let's go. And I don't always take like a ton of time soaking in all of the details of the images. So I feel like almost every single graphic novel that I have read, I would read again. But like top of the list, oh, sorry, I just whacked my desk. Top of the list is On a Sunbeam, because I would really like an opportunity to read it again, maybe a little bit slower, and really like soak up all of the details of the images, you know? She sounds right up my alley. Yeah, I feel like Emily Henry, I think was maybe the first romance author that I started to get into this year. Thank you, Ariel, for the recommendation. And I think it was very much, I think the reason that her books work for me is that they're very, very plot focused, and they still have a lot of like fun, silly tropes and like romance moments. But it doesn't get super caught up in the spicy scenes, which are usually the thing that can be like hit or miss for me. So I like Emily Henry. I think she's popular for a reason. Okay, next category that I have is 3 best main characters. So 3 books that I thought had like some of my favorite main characters of all time. So number 1, yeah, Gideon. Number 1, Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This book was incredible. This book was so good. I really liked this book. I read it I feel like in some of these categories, I was worried that I would have, like, I sort of felt like I might have like a recency bias in some of them, and I was picking more recent books. And this is one that I read towards the very beginning of the year. So I don't think we've talked about it really, but I loved this book. Highly recommend. I think it is so cool. Just really loved it. So this is a fantasy book, and the main character, Gideon, is like the definition of badass. She's just so cool, really funny and witty, and like doesn't take herself or things around her super seriously, which I really liked. I just thought she was so cool and very different from a lot of other fantasy main characters that I've read. Just loved. Just so good. Yeah, and this book in general was also like really, really, really phenomenal. I have this it's a trilogy, I think, or at least I think there are 3 books. And I have the second book, but I haven't read it yet because I'm like nervous to. It was one of those books where the first one was so good that I'm afraid of the second one. But I'm hoping to read the second one maybe this year because I really loved it and I want more. But yeah, really good. Just such a cool main character. Just like so cool. The second one, The Adventures of Amina Al-Zarafi. I talked about this one a little bit earlier. Amina is so cool. Really, really, really loved a like fantasy book that is so solidly fantasy, adventuring. You know, she's a fighter. She's like a lot of other fantasy characters, but she's a woman and also she's a mom, which was just so cool. Like, I thought she was such an incredible character that was so like multi-dimensional, and I loved her a lot. And then A Psalm for the Wild-Built. There were sort of like 2 main characters in this book. The like main character, Dex, was so cool and so relatable, and I just really loved their everything. But then also the second, I don't want to spoil her too much, but another main character in the book was also just so sweet and so gentle, and their interactions together were so sweet and so gentle, and I just really loved it. So those are my top 3 main characters. I guess sort of like 4 main characters because I'm talking about 2 in A Psalm for the Wild-Built, but they were great. They were all great. These streams always make me really thirsty because I'm talking so much. Okay, next category. I'm kind of, a thing that I have been really excited for about this is that I have like negative categories in here, which is something that it sometimes makes me nervous, but is also very exciting. So anyways, without further delay, 3 worst main characters. So some of these, no, one of these books, worst main character, and I hated the book. The rest of these, the other 2, worst main character, and I loved the book. So just to put it out there, I was intending for this to be like the 3 books that had main characters that I just like didn't like, and I didn't like the book. But I found that like I read some books this year that had like intentionally hateable main characters, and I thought it was sort of interesting to showcase those. So seeing Amina getting repeated has me thinking I need to run to the library. See, this was my thing, is that I didn't have Amina in my top 3 of the year overall, and then I had Amina in like several other categories, and I was like, now hang on a minute. Is this book my favorite or not? It's so good. You do have to run to the library. So, okay. 3 worst main characters. The Genius Plague, I already talked about. The main character was insufferable. Insufferable. Okay? The worst. And he ruined the book for me. The main character was super full of himself. He thought he was like the smartest person in the room, even when he had like no credentials. Like that was a big trend in this book, is the main character in The Genius Plague. He kept like going to places where there were so many people that were so much smarter than him, and he was just like, well, actually, I know everything already. And that pissed me off. It made me so mad. I was so annoyed at him. So anyways, worst main character. He wins. I don't even remember the main character's name. I just know that I hated him. Number 2 worst main character. Excuse me. It's snowing again also. Number 2 worst main character was Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, or Rebecca Kuang. I've seen both names in different spots, but it's the same person. Anyways, this book had a truly insufferable main character, and that was the point. The worst the thing that was so incredible about this book is that the main character had so many opportunities for redemption, and instead got worse and worse and worse. And it was incredible. It was like such a great book for that reason. So go pick it up. It was horrible in the best way. Loved the book. Horrible character. It was phenomenal. Like I was like my jaw on the floor consistently because of how awful the main character was. So yeah. I mean, it was my top read of the year. It was incredible, and I genuinely still think about it constantly. Yeah. It was like, if I had done top 5 instead of top 3, Amina would have been in there. And like I'm still thinking about maybe, like, I don't know. Amina was like basically one of my top favorite reads of the year. It's so good. You have to read it. Okay. And then my third 3 worst main characters. This is another sort of like cheating one, because this book had a bunch of main characters and they were all the worst. Is Bad Summer People by Emma Rosenblum. This is another one where the main characters are all bad, and that's intentional. And I found this year, I read a couple of books like that and I really liked them. I actually just enjoy reading books about terrible people. Who knew? The title is on point. Yeah. The title had me intrigued, and then I read the book and I was like, yeah, well, you're right. This really phenomenal fun thing what happened to me when I was reading this book, where there's a bunch of different main characters, so you get different chapters from different perspectives, which I really enjoy. And every time I would get a new perspective, for the first like couple paragraphs, I would be like, oh my God, finally, here is the good character. Here's the character that's not terrible. The like, moral whatever beacon of the story. Like, here's the good character. And then like 4 paragraphs in, I would be like, no, oh no, they're even worse than the last one. Like, it kept shocking me how terrible every single character was. I kept being surprised, which after a certain point I should have just known. Really, the moment I picked up the book called Bad Summer People, I should have known, but it still kept surprising me, which was really impressive and very fun. Every single character was the worst. Yeah, just the worst. Just so terrible. Anyways, loved it though. So yeah, this was an interesting category because the first book I hated. The other two I really loved because of how bad the characters were. So let's talk about 3 best romantic interests. So again, this category I was thinking specifically about the main romantic interest in the book being just the cutest and best. So number 1, The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. This was like a dual perspective. There are 2 main characters, but in my mind, like, Tiffy was the number 1 main character and Leon is the romantic interest. Anyways, Leon was just so sweet and so gentle and so sweet, and I really loved him. I thought he was just really sweet. I also really liked this book. I listened to it on audiobook and it was really great on audiobook. And this, I think, was part of my opinion. The narrator for Leon on audiobook had like an incredible accent. It was really good. So I really liked that one. Really good. My second of best romantic interest was Arrival Most Vile. So Eli, the romantic interest, also so sweet, so cute, very chaotic, but just so kind and sweet and great. And I was just big, huge smile. This was one of my favorite books that I read over this past year. It was so good. I just really loved this one. I thought the characters were really sweet. And I really loved the love story. It was really good. Okay, anyways, I really liked it. And then my next one was Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail, which is it's like what is it called? It's the second book in a series. What is that called? It's a sequel. Anyways, I'm fine. It's a sequel. And I liked the first book, but I actually liked this book, the second book, better. And I think part of it is because I liked the romantic interest so much. So the romantic interest, her name is Jordan. And she was hot. I mean, she sounded hot. And also, so there's a specific scene, and I won't spoiler much, but where Jordan is teaching the main character how to use a sledgehammer, and something about that has just stuck in my brain forever. It just was great. I just really loved it. Yeah. So those are my 3 favorite romantic interests, and I also really loved all of these books and would recommend them. Loved the couple in Arrival Most Vile. Impeccable dynamics. Yes, their dynamics were really, really, really good. It had like enemies to lovers, but in like a really, really gentle way, and where only one of them is like really perceives it as an enemy. I don't know. It was just really sweet and great. I loved it. Hi, kitty. Ren is back. He's staring at me. Anyways, loved those. Yep, would recommend. Really great. And then I had a category for 3 worst romantic interests, but I actually only came up with 2. And this was another one. Also, I know that I said a lot about how much I like Emily Henry, and that's still true. But the romantic interest, I'll explain. Okay, just bear with me. So anyways, this one was another one where this does not necessarily mean I disliked these books. I will explain myself. Bear with me. But the like main romantic interest in the book I did not like for different reasons. So the first one, Happy Couple by Noisha Dolan. I have learned how to pronounce her name, and every time I second guess myself. But the Happy Couple, The Happy Couple? I think I've seen it both ways. Anyways, by Noisha Dolan. First of all, let me clarify. I loved this book. It was incredible. It was so good. 10 out of 10. Really loved this book. Do read it. There are a bunch of characters in this book. So if you're reading it, it'll make sense if you read it. But the main man romantic interest was just the worst. He was the worst. He's the worst. You get a bunch of different perspectives in this book, which again is something that I really like in books. And when you're reading everyone else's perspective, you're sort of like, this guy seems kind of like the worst, right? Like, he sort of seems like the worst. I don't like this guy. He kind of seems like the worst. And then you get to his perspective and you're like, this guy's the worst. So that guy's the worst. Loved the book. Incredible. Like, it was so good, but he's the worst. But the book's really good. I loved it a lot. And it was another one of those things where like him being the worst is part of the book and like makes the book good. But yeah, he's the worst. Anyways, Beach Read by Emily Henry. I personally, this is my personal experience, and this is going to be one where I don't think we're all going to have the same perspective or same opinion on this, and it is what it is. I thought that the main romantic interest, his name was Augustus, I thought he was quite boring and just not interesting. Ooh, sorry. I just didn't like him. I thought he was boring. I also didn't love this book. I liked it, but I didn't love it. There were a lot of moments in the book that I really liked, but overall, it just was not my favorite book. I think Emily Henry, like, her writing style was really good, and I liked parts of the book, like I said. I really wanted to like this book because it's sort of sold as like an enemies to lovers, but I found I couldn't really relate to either of the characters. And I just found the main like romantic interest to be quite boring. And for like a romance book, I feel like it's important to have an interesting romance, you know? I don't know. And I think also this is one of those things where that's very much like just an opinion. And like different people will feel differently based on like different preferences. So, but yeah, I didn't like him. A book I'm reading now, I know he's supposed to be the worst, but he's the worst. Yeah, that was like when I was reading Happy Couple, I was like, this guy's really the worst. And it took me a while to figure out that he is supposed to be the worst. I don't think that's a spoiler. Like it's pretty obvious from the beginning, but yeah. I need to double check the pronunciation because now I'm afraid again that I'm pronouncing it wrong. I feel like I have to do this every single time. Nisha. I don't know if I was saying it correctly. It's just that my brain gets stuck on this, but Nisha Dolan. I just really, really, really love her writing style. And she does like a great job of sort of like almost, I don't know how to say this in a way that's gonna, let me preface with, I love her books and you should read them, but I feel like she does this really cool thing of taking like sort of boring, average scenarios and making them worth exploring through a whole book. And it's a superpower. Like it's not even like the biggest scenarios that happen in her books, but the books are so good. Anyways, I loved this book. It was so good. But it was just interesting. I don't know. He was the worst. Beach Read is the only Emily Henry I've read, so I really need to get some more of her books. I liked it, but I won't rave about it either. Yeah, like Beach Read. So Beach Read was the first Emily Henry book that I ever was exposed to. That sounds weird, but my wonderful friend Ariel lent me her copy of Beach Read like probably over a year ago, and I read like the first 2 chapters and was kind of like, I don't know. And at the time, I thought it was just because I didn't like romance books. But then over this year, I was like, wait, but I do like some romance books, so what's the deal? Anyways, I tried a different Emily Henry book, so it wasn't my first exposure, like it wasn't my first Emily Henry read. And the other Emily Henry book that I read first, which was People We Made on Vacation, I really liked. So then I was sort of like, okay, I like Emily Henry. And then eventually I came back to Beach Read, and I feel like I had like a better grasp of it where I liked it. But I think it was just that I didn't love the main characters. They just weren't my faves. It is what it is. It is what it is. Anyways, also it was still a good book. I feel like that was another, like a trend that I had while making this presentation was that even my categories that were like bad things. I didn't have that many bad things, which is pretty cool. Okay. The next category that I have is the books that made me cry the most. So these are the books that made me cry the most. It's pretty straightforward. I just cried a lot while reading these. There were a pretty good chunk of books that I read this year that did make me cry. I like a book that makes me cry. What can I say? I don't know why that is, but it is the case for me. Sorry, Kitty, let me move my water bottle out of your way. So the number one that made me cry the most was Crying in H Mart. I cried so much while reading this book. Like we talked about a little bit earlier, it's quite emotional and covers a very heavy, emotional, difficult topics. So like absolutely no surprise there that it made me cry constantly nonstop, but it made me cry constantly nonstop. It made me cry so much. Yeah. It was great, but it made me cry a lot. The next one was Our Wives Under the Sea. This one made me cry as well a lot. It's really good. It's a great book. It's an incredible story. It's like I feel like I heard it described once as like a love story where it's more about like how difficult love can be. I don't know, but it's a love story. Okay. There's love happening here, but love is tested. Does that make sense? And it made me cry. And then Catching Fire. So I reread the Hunger Games trilogy this year. I do this like basically every single year. I reread the Hunger Games like at least once every 2 or 3 years. They're some of my most favorite books, and they're like my comfort books that I always come back to. So I reread them this year. I love them all. And they all make me cry a lot. But the second in the series, Catching Fire, it makes me cry the most. It makes me cry a lot. Yeah, I cried a lot. I remember literally, I think when I was rereading this book, I finished it sort of late at night. And then I just like sat in my office for like an hour sobbing, and I couldn't go to bed yet because I just couldn't stop sobbing my eyes out, because this book, it just makes me cry a lot. Anyways, it's great though. You should read The Hunger Games. Beach read is my least favorite. Yes, I remember us talking about that, Ariel, and it made me feel really validated that like other Emily Henry is really good, but Beach read is like I love that Catching Fire is on this list because I also cried. Yeah. If you don't cry at least once during the Hunger Games, you're stronger than I am, is what I'll say. Your average rating was like it was 4.47. And even the ones that had things that I disliked, I still liked. Like, I read so many good books this year. Good job, books. Oh, the Tatiana Maslany. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but I know that I've heard it because I also listened to her audiobooks. So good. Yeah, that narrator does an incredible job of the Hunger Games. If you're an audiobook person, definitely check out those Hunger Games ones because they're really, really, really great. Totally agree. Hi, Adveril. The first Hunger Games is my favorite book. I love the Hunger Games series so much. I think it is probably my favorite series. Like I said, it's my like comfort series. It's something that I come back to all the time, that I could talk about tons. I've literally half jokingly talked about having a Books with Bella stream where we literally just talk about the Hunger Games and we just like deep dive into the Hunger Games, which I know there are like entire like podcasts and YouTube channels dedicated to talking about the Hunger Games. I know a lot of people have talked about it, but it's one of my favorite series. It's just, I think it is the best like YA, like I remember it coming out around a time where like YA dystopian was quite popular. And I think it is the best. I think not only is it the best YA dystopian I've ever read, I think it is the best YA book that I've ever read because it is so, like, I find sometimes YA, this is just my opinion. I find sometimes YA pulls punches because it's for young adults. And sometimes YA has like secret propaganda almost, or like, I don't know how to explain it, but sometimes YA is not really giving young adults the full the world is bad vibe that it could. And I feel like in the Hunger Games, Suzanne Collins is like, guess what, babes? It's bad. I can't explain it better than that, but I feel like she's like, I know that I'm writing for youths, but I am not going to make this easy. Like, everything is terrible. Adults will manipulate these kids. Like, it's rough. And I just really appreciate that, even though it's really dark and terrible. So thanks, Suzanne Collins. You make me cry still, constantly. Love that. Love you. Guess what, babes? It's bad. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I need to reread those as an adult. I have not touched the Hunger Games since I was a teenager, and I feel like I would still really appreciate it. If you ever want to talk about the Hunger Games, I will talk about them for too much, and like really too much. I've even thought about having like a group reread where we talk about them chapter by chapter, but then I've had to be like, settle down. Okay, Bella, take a deep breath. It's okay. But I love those books a lot. Yeah, I think I agree, Cozy Kites. I think they're better as an adult because I think as a kid, you're like, wow. Like, I remember, this is, okay, also slight Hunger Games spoilers, super popular book, and it's been out for quite a while. So I'm not going to say anything about the plot, but I'm going to say something about like a central theme. I remember when I read them as a youth, I really thought like, dang, that Katniss, she's a hero. She's a toughie. She's a hero. And as an adult, it's not that I don't admire Katniss, because of course I do, but I feel like the reality is that like Katniss sort of like isn't that special and is in fact manipulated by all of the adults around her, and that is chilling. And I think that is something that is really difficult to pick up on when you're young and reading those books, but as an adult, it is, for me at least, the hardest part of the books and like the main thing in the books. You know what I mean? And that, like, I just didn't really quite grasp that when I was younger reading them. How do you feel about new adult novels? I read a lot of like, is that a category or do you mean like adult novel? What does this mean? I read all kinds of books and I like them all. I feel like hi kitty. I feel like I don't read as much young adult now as I have in the past because I also, okay, I don't know if it's just me. I know we've had this conversation around here before, but I get really confused about the distinction between young adult and not that. And like we've talked about how like there are some young adult books that like don't really feel like they should be categorized as young adult, and some adult books that feel like they could be categorized as young adult, and it just all confuses me. Okay, it's a different category. Cool. Huh. 18 plus or 21 plus. Like YA, but the age range for the main characters is 18 to 25 rather than YA being 15, 16, 18-ish. Okay, that's kind of interesting because I feel like that would capture some of the books that are like YA in vibes but have content that's maybe not appropriate for 15-year-olds. I feel like for me, in my experience, and let's clarify, I am just a reader for fun / person who likes to talk about books on the internet. I am not in any way part of the industry, and I like learning things about the book industry, but I also like not learning things about the book industry because sometimes I find publishing in general to be bad. Sorry, that's my take. So sometimes it feels to me like these different categories like YA and not have more to do with how to make money, like how publishing can make money, than they do about like who the books are for. Like I've heard that YA has different pricing than not YA books, and can be like sold in different ways than not YA books. And so it feels less about like what age range is this book for and more about how do I make money off of this book, which is frustrating for me. And I personally find that like I feel like there should be, or maybe is, some core thing in YA that is like, what are the vibes? But I can't pinpoint it, which makes me feel like maybe that doesn't exist. And I feel like maybe it would be more beneficial to just literally have labels that are like, this book is appropriate for like 15-year-olds or older, or 18-year-olds or older, or 21-year-olds or older, or younger than those ages, whatever. Like, I feel like it would be more beneficial to just say, like, this book is appropriate for this age, rather than to have these categories that are pretty indistinct, in my opinion. I don't know. I hope that makes, like, any amount of sense. And again, I'm not in the publishing industry, so I don't really know. I'm not an expert here. I find that it has been unhelpful for me personally to say I do or do not like YA or whatever. And instead I like to just pick books regardless of that. But I also think that it's really important that, like, kids know what they're getting into when they're picking up different books. I don't know. I'm curious about what y'all think, but I just feel like the categories are so muddled. Does that make sense? Authors can lose a lot of control because of the publishers, which is very frustrating to me. It can be very manipulative to both the artists and the consumers, exactly for why you just said. Yeah, I've been reading a bit more about the publishing industry and, like, what it's like to self-publish and why authors should self-publish is the vibe I'm getting, because of some of the problems in the publishing industry. And I find that really interesting. It's a weird industry. I read a whole bunch of things, but my mainstay genre is adult queer fantasy. Nice. I really like adult queer fantasy. I feel like I would kind of read anything. As of right now, I don't really have any genres that I, like, don't read, but I also don't think I have a niche. Like, I don't think I have a niche. Bye, kitty. Anyways, the categories are just interesting. I do read YA, but I also read not YA books. So that's my final answer. I hope that made any amount of sense. Also, if anyone here is an author and has any experiences with publishing or with self-publishing, I'm genuinely, truly so curious about it. So yeah. Anyways, as of right now, as a person who is not an author and knows very little, self-publishing seems like the way to go right now. I did just read a spicy vampire fantasy book someone lent me. It was surprisingly okay for something I wouldn't usually pick up. I love when that happens. I feel like that has happened to me a lot over this past year, where someone has recommended a book to me or lent me a book and I wouldn't have picked it up, but then I read it and it's been like one of my favorites, which that's pretty fun. Okay, so we just went through books that made me cry the most. If you also like crying, read these books. First one, Crying in H Mart because it was emotional. Our Wives Under the Sea because it was, like, loving and heartbreaking. Catching Fire because, because Hunger Games. Okay. Next, I have Furthest from My Expectations. Also, I want to make a brief call out that the cover of Touch of Jen, I put a little emoji over because I was nervous about getting in trouble on TikTok. Just so you know. So if you look it up, the cover looks slightly different. Okay. Yeah. Booty. That's why it's a peach emoji. But, I didn't want to get in trouble on TikTok. So Mr. TikTok, please don't get me in trouble. Okay. I'm doing my best. Okay. Anyways, it's like barely anything, but it has, like, the vaguest amount of booty and I didn't want to get in trouble. Okay. So, now we are getting into categories that were requested or recommended to me by friends in Discord. So again, huge thank you to my friends in Discord who suggested these categories. I loved them, obviously. I didn't choose all of them, but actually the reason that some categories I didn't include was not because I didn't want to include them, but there were some categories that I found I couldn't find enough books for. So if you suggested a category and it's not in here either, there were also some of them that I had already done myself. But there were some of them, I think there was one, I remember there being one that was it was something negative, like a book I in some way didn't like, I can't remember. And I just couldn't find enough books for it. So, okay. Furthest from My Expectations. So I think this request came from Bookie. Thank you, Bookie. And the request was books that surprised me. So either I thought that I would really like them and I didn't, or I thought they would be one thing and they were something else. So, first one, Madam. I really thought that I would like this. So when I picked up Madam, I had heard that it was one of the best examples of dark academia. I heard it was I just heard that it was a really great Dark Academia book. And I thought that I would, one, like Dark Academia, and two, like this because it was good Dark Academia. And my first point, unsure. Not sure if that is true because I hated this. Oh, not hated, but I really didn't like this book. That's a strong word, but I disliked this book. We talked about it earlier. I felt like it like leaned on being about misogyny and didn't have much else. So I don't know if I liked Dark Academia because I didn't like this book, but I really thought that I would like it, and I didn't. The second one, Yellowface, I just didn't realize it was going to be as dark as it was. Like, it kept getting worse and worse in a good way. Again, I liked this book, but it got like dark and complex and bad things happened kind of vibes. And I didn't realize just how dark it was going to go, basically. So it sort of surprised me there. It was not what I expected. But again, I loved this book. And then A Touch of Jen by Beth Morgan. This was a book that was recommended to me by a friend. I would not have picked it up if it hadn't been recommended to me by a friend. I didn't know anything about it. It's like horror. It's a horror book. And at the time that I read it, I wasn't really sure if I liked horror. Since then, I found a lot of horror that I like. So there's that. But like at the time that I read this, I would never have picked it up. I hadn't even heard of it. I didn't know anything about it. So A Touch of Jen by Beth Morgan. And basically I knew that it was categorized as horror, but like the first half of the book didn't feel horror-y. And so I sort of like was lulled into this like, okay, maybe it's not that horror. It's just sort of like kind of odd vibes. But then boy, howdy, was it horror. So this was sort of like, I almost didn't have expectations before reading it. And then the first half, I had expectations, and it was that it wouldn't be terrifying. And then the end totally blew me away. I loved this book. It was so weird. It's very weird in a really great way. It was like, it's so weird. It's so good. And it definitely, towards the end when the actual horror was happening, I was like, how did we get here? But in the best way. It was so weird and so good. Self-pub is its own box of bees. It can be very difficult to gain an audience or make a profit without doing a ton of self-promotion, which can take years and several publications for some authors. And it still requires a massive amount of luck and privilege. Yeah. I've been talking about this a lot with my partner because we've just been like casually researching the publishing industry, as one does. And that's the thing that we've been seeing is that publish, like the sort of traditional publishing route also takes a lot of luck and privilege, because like there are like sometimes like even good authors just like aren't really treated fairly in traditional publishing. But self-publishing also has that problem, and you have to do a lot of work. I don't know. It's all bad and also all good. I don't know. It's confusing. I agree though. It's not like, oh, just self-publish, because then you don't have to deal with traditional publishing houses. Self-publishing is really, really hard, but for different reasons. So, I am not an author, and the idea of writing and then also publishing a book sounds very intimidating to me. So I want to take this moment to say huge thank you and props to all authors. I appreciate you tons, and I love books. Okay, next category that I have after Furthest from My Expectations is Hardest Reads. So this category was suggested or requested by Ariel. Thank you, Ariel. Appreciate you. And I think this request was like either hardest to get into or like difficult material, things like that. So I have a mix of both. First up, I have Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. And I really struggled to get into this one. And it was sort of weird because the first chapter had me. I was hooked. I was so intrigued by this book. And then like the next several, like the middle few chapters kind of lost me. And I felt like I just had a hard time connecting with it. And then the end sort of brought me back. But there was like a lot of chapters in the middle where I had a hard time connecting with the book. So that was why it was a hard read for me. It was just hard to connect. The next one that I had is The Woman in Me by Britney Spears, this is a memoir that got a lot of attention when it was published towards the end of last year, because it was like a very open and honest account of Brittany's experience, like from her own telling. I think it was like really the first time we got to hear about her experience since she was in a conservatorship for so long and wasn't really able to openly talk about her experience. Anyways, this had really, really tough material. So I didn't struggle to get into this book. I immediately felt quite connected to this book and like invested in it. But it was difficult to read because of how difficult the material was. And I found it extra difficult because of the like firsthand experience account. It was just very difficult. It was a really incredible book. And I think it's really important to listen to, like firsthand accounts of kind of abuse. Like this was, I think her conservatorship was abusive. So it's important to listen to those firsthand accounts, but it was just a tough read. And then of course, Crying in H Mart. I feel like y'all have heard me talk about this book a lot today and about how much it made me cry and absolutely emotionally wrecked me. It was so hard to read, but so phenomenal to read. But yeah, it was really hard to read. It was hard to read it through all of my tears that it made me cry. So yeah, those are my hard to read ones. Next, I have books that I would recommend to friends. Basically, almost all of the books that I've talked about today, especially the books that I've said good things about, I would recommend to friends. But I tried to pick ones that I would recommend for specific and different reasons for this category. So books that I like specifically would be like, hey, pick this up. Yeah, I don't know. So the first one I had was Our Wives Under the Sea because it was like a very good and weird and different love story. Very much, again, about the like enduring love, if that makes sense, like love that has to go through a difficult time. And it was also just like really interesting and different from a lot of other books that I've read. So I would recommend it to a friend for that reason. The next was The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi because y'all have heard me talk about this a bunch today. It's so good. The main character is so phenomenal. And I feel like it's the type of main character in fantasy that I want more of. And it had me hooked. I couldn't put this book down. I would absolutely recommend it for a friend to read. It's big, but like, and I'm still recommending it because it's great. Okay. And then Clee Cute. I wrote notes I wrote notes throughout my presentation so that if I couldn't remember like why I picked something for a certain spot, I had little notes to jog my memory. And I think my notes for this one actually say everything that I want to say, which is in all caps, gay and hot. So yeah. So yeah, if any of those sound interesting to you, I would recommend these to you. Every time Amina goes on another list, my ego grows. It's a great recommendation. That was a phenomenal book. Sold, sign me up. Yeah, sometimes like I can tell you about all the reasons that I liked Clee Cute, but sometimes all it takes are those two words, gay and hot. So yeah. I loved that one, would recommend these. Again, basically all of the books that I'm talking about, I would recommend, but these are ones that I would specifically, like if a friend was like, hey, do you have any books that I might like? These are the ones that I would say. Our Wives Under the Sea is kind of the weirdest one. If you have a friend that's like into something kind of different, that one. Amina, fantasy, incredible. Clee Cute, if you want a romance. Okay. The next category, I really liked this category suggestion. I liked them all, but I thought this one is interesting because I hadn't thought about it. So top new authors, this was requested by Sage. Thank you, Sage. And Sage recommended either like authors that were new to me that I hadn't read before, or authors that like had like a debut novel this past year. So I went actually with all debut authors. Well, I guess not just debut as in their first book. It didn't have to be a novel, whatever. Anyways. So these were all authors that these are their first published books and they all published in 2023. So first I have Sarah Underwood, Lies We Sing to the Sea. This was her debut novel and it was phenomenal. I read this towards the beginning of the year with Ariel. We buddy read it and it was a little heartbreaking in a really phenomenal way. It has like mythology vibes. So good. So tough and so good. And I was really impressed. As it's like all of these were like impressive debut novels. They were all really, really strong. So next is Jenny Jackson, Pineapple Street. This is a debut novel. It's good it has like rich people being rich and annoying and also kind of just morally bad. I personally really like books or stories in general that are about like rich people being like kind of shitty or just like kind of bad, you know? So if you also like rich people being bad, you would like this book. It's not even like, it's just like rich people like not being aware of their privilege and like being annoying and not really getting better or like having opportunities to learn and like squandering them. I don't know. But yeah, Jenny Jackson, Pineapple Street. I really liked that one. And then Ling Ling Wong, Natural Beauty. This one, boy howdy, this one was a trip. This one, so Natural Beauty is, I believe it's categorized as like a horror book. It's like, what if the beauty industry was evil? And it's phenomenal. It was so good. This book really, it caught me up. Like I was just really caught up in it. I thought it was phenomenal. So creative, so chilling, so weird, really good. So yeah, these were all 3 new authors in 2023. These were their first published novels. And I'm excited to see what else they write in the future because I really loved these books. Storygraph question, follow or friends? So everyone is totally welcome to follow me on Storygraph. If you do that, you just get notifications about what I'm reading. You can add me as a friend, but if I don't recognize your username, I might not add you back. That's not like I don't mean anything by it. I just like, that's kind of my like general rule. Excuse me. That's kind of my general rule on all platforms. I like adding people as friends on Storygraph because I think it's really fun to see what other people are reading. And at least in Storygraph, there's like there's not really a danger or downside to adding people as friends. But if you do want to add me as a friend, just let me know that you're doing it so that I like connect the dots and I'm like, yes, I know this person from somewhere. I'm super open about all of the stuff that I post on Storygraph, so you're welcome definitely to follow me and to add me as a friend. Perfect. That sounds good. And you'll get to see what I'm reading. Yeah. I also use Libro FM for audiobooks. Thank you for doing that Libro FM command. I switched over from Audible a little while ago. I finally officially canceled my Audible subscription at the end of last year. And I'm going to go on a small rant about it. Just prepare yourselves. DRM stands for Digital Rights Management, and it is super big in like publishing in books right now, and it is so annoying. Kitty. It is really, I believe that people who create stuff should be paid for what they create, and I agree that it shouldn't be easy for people to just like distribute 1 million copies of like digital works for free because then people aren't getting paid and it's terrible. However, the current solutions for DRM stink. One of those is Audible. I think Audible has a terrible solution for DRM, and I will explain it to you. When you buy books on Audible, you're not buying the book. You are buying the rights to play the book on Audible. That is it. And that annoys me for a couple of different reasons. I think it's a bad system, but it also means that like in the future, if Audible ever like went away, you would not have your books. You cannot download them and have them, save them on your own computer, for instance. They're only in Audible. You don't own the books. You only own the right to play the book on Audible. And I just think that that's kind of sketchy and I don't like it. Libro does not work that way. When you purchase a book on Libro, you own the book. You own actual like audio files to the audiobook that you have, which I think is a much better system. I like it a lot. And Libro allows you to support your favorite local bookstore. You can like search for your favorite local bookstore and they will send a certain amount of money every time you make a purchase through Libro, which is so cool. Yeah. So that's my small little rant. Everyone do whatever works best for them. I used Audible for a really long time. It just annoys me. I just think that that's sketchy and it really bugs me. Sorry. Okay, I'm stepping off of my soapbox, but I like Libro a lot. So yeah, also if you switch to Storygraph and Libro, it means you're using less Amazon, which is great. So I ditched Audible because Amazon, yeah, that's also a really great reason to ditch, is I'm trying to use less and less of Amazon, I say, while on Twitch, the Amazon streaming. But yeah, I also think that Libro just like works a lot better than Audible. I really just prefer it in general, which is great, but yeah. Oh my goodness, yeah. You have a similar lofty goal for books? I'm aiming for 50, nice, managed 32 last year. I go up and down. Like, okay, in the year 2020, and I think that there's a pretty good reason why this happened, because I went from having hobbies that were outside in public to staying in my home. I read over 100 books, which was wild. And I've never read that many books in 1 year since then. But lately my number has been creeping up. I read over 70 books last year. And I have been really enjoying spending more of my free time reading. So I think last year I set my goal as like 30 something books, and I obviously beat that. And this year I think I like to be conscious of like things change. So I spent a lot of 2023 without a job. My main source of income has been content creation. Hey y'all. But I really in 2024 I'm looking to get a more stable job, so I know that the amount of free time that I have will change. So I'm not like, I read 74 books in 2023. I'm not setting 70 books as my 2024 goal. But I think my goal is like 40 or something. Because I really like to push myself to read in my free time. I really enjoy it. Thank you for mentioning that. I've been wanting to find a place for audiobooks, and I personally didn't like Audible. Yeah, also hi Kinix. It's so nice to see you. Audible is just not my fave. It's just like not great. Libro is really, really great. Genuinely, it's awesome. I do recommend. I barely managed 12 books in the past, but with my new job driving, I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Nice, yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where like as your life changes and you have different amounts of free time and different hobbies where you can do different things at different times in different ways, that's something that changes. So Libro has the Tatiana Maslany, I feel like I'm not saying that right, Hunger Games audiobooks. Yes, I love that. Anyways, y'all, I am going to keep going because I have a couple more categories to get through, and I want to tell you about my 2023 books. But thank you for talking about Libro with me and Storygraph. Those are my two favorite book platforms, and I would love to see y'all there. Okay, next category up, we have favorite quotes. This was another one requested by Sage. Sage, you crushed it with these category requests. They were great. So I have 3 quotes. I feel like 2 of them are like really outstanding, and one of them is like because it's funny, but it's fine. Okay, so my first quote is from Our Wives Under the Sea, and the quote is, "I want to explain her in a way that would make you love her, but the problem with this is that loving is something we do alone and through different sets of eyes." There was like this whole, it like the quote kind of like went on longer than this, but the quote also talks about like how when someone is telling you a story about their significant other or someone that they love, they'll like tell you all these little details, and when you're listening, you're like, okay, get to the point. But like, I don't know, there was something about this that was it just like, I really felt it, you know, like, I don't know. I liked that quote a lot. It stuck with me. My next quote that I have is from Happy Couple by Naisha Dolan. And this one, this is like a random tiny little quote from the book, and I don't even have the context. And it's because when I was reading it, I wrote this down in my notebook because I like still haven't stopped chuckling about it. It's so funny to me. But one of the characters is talking about how someone suggested that they give someone the benefit of the doubt. And they're like, yeah, I always do that. I'm a major league doubt benefactor. And something about that has stuck in my head. I think it is so funny. It's just like, it's kind of like a silly and like roundabout way of saying that like I give people the benefit of the doubt so much I'm like incredible at it. But I felt like something about that was so funny to me. And it really captured how I think like Naisha Dolan is so witty and funny and writes these characters that just like are constantly so witty, and I loved it. And then my third quote is from A Psalm for the Wild Built, and I feel like this is one of the like I feel like if you read this book, you might remember this quote. But okay, it's, "You keep asking why your work is not enough, and I don't know how to answer that because it is enough to exist in the world and marvel at it. You don't need to justify that or earn it. You are allowed to just live." And that "you are allowed to just live," I feel like that's like the vibe of the book. I don't know. It was great. It was great. Anyways, those were there were a lot of quotes that I've liked of a lot of books that I've read, but these were 3 that I still think about, if that makes sense, that's still sort of like stuck in my brain. So thank you for that request, Sage. I really liked that category. It was really fun to think on. You are allowed to just live. Yeah. And isn't that an affirmation, you know? I need that reminder. Okay, the next category I have, and I think this is is this the last one? I'm not sure. No, it's certainly not the last one. Oops. Tattoo that on my body for real. I need to always constantly be reminded of that. Ugh. Those quotes got me good. The next were my top 3 audiobooks. I listened to quite a lot of audiobooks this year, and a lot of them were really good, but these were some that stuck out to me. So first, The Adventures of Amina Al-Sirafi. This had 2 narrators. The narrators were Lamis Isaac and Amin El-Gamal. And first of all, the storytelling, the way that the narrators did the book was just really phenomenal. But something that was so cool, and this was something that Ariel initially told me about when recommending the audiobook to me. Something that was so neat was that the narrators had moments in the book where they would almost talk to one another. So for instance, there are moments in the book where the main character, Amina, she's talking about her story. And in the book, she she says, there's parts that are no, this is how it happened, as if she's talking to someone that's just outside of the room. And in the audiobook, the narrator would sort of move away from the microphone so that her voice was lower. So it made it sound like she was turning away to talk to someone, and it was just so cool. It was just so cool. I felt like I was there in the room, and it was really neat. I loved that audiobook. Also, The Flatshare. The narrators were Carrie Hope Fletcher and Kwaku Fortune. And I thought that they both had accents that were just fantastic. And I really liked the way that they did the audiobook. I just thought it was fun to listen to. And then Happy Place. So this one was narrated by Julia Whalen. And I think I'm pronouncing that right. Julia Whalen, I think, narrates all of Emily Henry's audiobooks. I know another Emily Henry audiobook that I listened to was also that narrator. And I just think she does a great job. I think she does a really great job of capturing the emotions of the character, and I just really love it. But yeah, those are top 3 audiobooks. Oh yeah. The next was 3 endings I want to change. Okay. And these are all on here for different reasons. So let me explain myself. This is another Sage requested category. Again, Sage, you crushed it. Thank you for the categories. Okay. The first one is my most cancelable take. I can't really explain it all that much because I don't want to spoil the ending. But I just felt like the ending for One Last Stop could have been sadder. Do you know what I mean? And I won't say more because I really don't want to spoil anything. So I'm really sorry if you're what are you talking about? If you've read it, maybe you know what I'm talking about. I don't know. I felt like it could have been sad. Sorry. My notes for that, my notes say too happy. These category suggestions brought to you by Insomnia. I'll take it. I really appreciate it. They were so good. Also, hi, Abby. Welcome in. We're talking about books. We're doing a little reading wrap up of 2023. These are some of my favorites and different categories, top 3 books of 2023. So I felt the same about As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow. Could have been sadder. Sometimes I don't like a happy ending, and that's on me. That's my problem. But yeah, that's me. Our Wives Under the Sea. The ending was like, the ending was exactly what it should have been. It was exactly correct, and it broke my heart. Dang it. So it's like I don't want it to change, but also I want it to change, and also I'm crying, you know? One Last Stop went in the direction of sad ending until the very end, and I was so relieved. I really, really wanted that happy ending. See, I was like, oh yes, we're going in the direction that I expect, and then it switched up and it was happy, and I was like, now hang on a minute. I felt that way about Under the Whispering Door, yeah. I'm trying to get into reading this year too, yay. Or wait, I can't read, but yay. Affy, I'll read with you anytime. I read a bunch of books, so... And then the third ending that I wanted to change was The Only One Left by Riley Sager. And we actually talked about this earlier. And I think Ariel said something like Riley Sager's editor needs to like make him delete 3 twists. And that's how I feel. I wanted to stop. I wanted to make him stop. I was like, stop with the twists. That's quite enough. You've reached your limits. Stop. So that's what I would have changed about the ending. Yeah, it was just like too many twists. At a certain point, you just have to stop, okay? Okay. Next category, again, thank you, Sage. Best book covers. This one's pretty straightforward. These were just book covers that I thought were so beautiful and so great, and I loved them. So the first one is Being Ace. This was an anthology, so it didn't have one author. It had like a ton of authors. And this was a book where like the central theme of the book is the like asexual aromantic experience, but the the book had a bunch of totally different stories that were written by different authors, and it spanned a bunch of different genres, and it was so good. Also, I love an anthology in general, so I really liked this a lot. But the cover is so cool. Like, I just think that the art on that cover is so beautiful. I love the colors. I love the art. I love the font. I think it's so pretty. More funky covers like that, please. Yeah. The next one is Cupid's Revenge by Vibeke Brugman. And I also, this was another, like, I just think the art on this cover is so pretty. Like, something, I don't know, I don't have a ton of words to say about it. I just thought it was really, really pretty. I loved the art style. I loved the like placement of the characters kind of like tumbling together. I just thought it was so great. I loved it a lot. And then my third, and also we talked about Cupid's Revenge a little bit earlier. This is my one that I really liked that had theater kid energy, but community theater, and I loved it. And then the third one that I have is Laura Dean Keeps Breaking Up With Me by Mariko Tamaki and Rosemary Valero O'Connell. Rosemary Valero O'Connell is the illustrator. And I thought the cover of this one was really clever and cool. Like, I just really like the placement. Also, I love an undercut. So I just really loved the close-up of the back of Laura Dean's head with like short hair and that like undercut. I just loved it a lot. I thought it was so cool. And I feel like it was very, I don't know, everything about it I just really liked. Laura Dean, yeah. I love that cover. I just think it's so good. Also, that's a graphic novel, so if you like the art on the cover of that one, that's what the whole book is. Just more and more of that art. Still here lurking post stream, my eyes be like, yeah. I feel like whenever I finish stream, I need to have at least like 15 minutes where I'm just not around any screens to give my eyes a little break. Because my eyes get a little sleepy after stream. Okay. Next category that I have is most overhyped. And I've actually talked about all 3 of these books already, so I feel like they won't be a huge surprise to see them here. Number 1, Beach Read by Emily Henry. I feel like this was overhyped because it's an Emily Henry book, not because of like anything about the book specifically, if that makes sense. I just feel like all Emily Henry books get a lot of like attention. Like even on the top of the cover of the book, it says New York Times bestseller. Like, it is a hyped book. And I found like that, I felt like Beach Read was just like meh for me. I felt like it was overhyped. Madam is one that I'm calling overhyped because I kept seeing it be referenced as like, this is the dark academia book. Like, this is the one. If you want to read dark academia, read this. And then I felt like, for what? The book was not good to me personally. I didn't like it. And then the only one left by Riley Sager, I feel like is a similar thing to Emily Henry, where like, I think it's, well, okay. Similar but different. I think Beach Read is hyped because Emily Henry is hyped, but Emily Henry is really good. I really like Emily Henry's other books, but I didn't like Beach Read. And I think that Riley Sager is just overhyped in general. No offense. It's a little bit of, I mean, like, I feel like Riley Sager's books are all of his books are like very, very hyped, and they're considered really, really good. And I do like them, but I feel like why are we not punishing him for his endings? He needs to be better about endings, in my opinion. And I don't like what is that? Why aren't more people saying that? Right? Is that just me? Anyways, where were we? I started reading again recently, and it's been really great. It's been like 8 years since I picked up a book. Yeah, I go back and forth, and I have like different times where I read a lot and then times where I don't read as much. And I think like a lot of people, after I graduated college, I like didn't read for a while because I feel like I got burnt out on reading in school. And then over the last couple of years, I've really gotten back into reading. The pandemic really encouraged me to read a lot because I had fewer like in-person things that I could do. So it was like a big hobby that I picked up. And then I have been doing these book streams for quite some time on Twitch, which has also really helped me stay encouraged and excited about reading. So I like reading. Okay. So our next category is most underappreciated. Again, requested by Sage. Thank you. So this one, I tried to pick books that I really liked, but I haven't really heard a lot of people talking about, or I haven't, I just haven't seen a lot about, if that makes sense. So by underappreciated, I was sort of going for like the opposite of most overhyped, which I think was like the vibe of this, a recommendation for categories. So not necessarily that people disliked them or said anything bad about these books. I haven't actually heard anything bad about these books, but I feel like there are some books where I hear a lot of people talking about them, and these books I haven't heard a lot of people talking about. So that's why I picked them. So one, The Happy Couple by Nisha Dolan. I just love Nisha Dolan, and I feel like I don't hear a lot about her, but her books are incredible. So this one, this one was new for this year. It was published, or last year. It was published in 2023, and it was great. I loved it, so definitely check it out. I think Nisha Dolan is a sort of specific style author, but I love her books so much. I think she's so cool. The next one is Arrival Most Vile by R.K. Ashwick. I also feel like this one is one I hadn't heard a lot of people talking about. I hadn't even heard of it. It was recommended to me by Sage, actually. It was recommended for book club, and I loved this book. This was another one that was one of my just one of my favorite reads of 2023. I think it is so good. I loved it. It just made me so happy. If you like Legends and Lattes, this has a similar vibe in that it is a fantasy book, but it has more of like a gentle theme. I want to clarify, like, sometimes I feel like it's a bummer when books are just like constantly compared to one another. And I think this is very solidly separate from and unique from Legends and Lattes, but the thing that they share is that fantasy but gentle vibe. I loved this book. I thought it was so good. And then Yours for the Taking by Gabrielle Korn. This is another one that was published in 2023, or was it? No, I think it was. I could double check. Yes, it was published in December of 2023, so it's still pretty new. But I just think it's like really interesting and very good, and I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it, so I really liked it. It was very good. But those are my underappreciated. Again, by underappreciated, I don't mean that people are saying negative things about them. I just mean I feel like I haven't seen as many people talking about them. Okay. I got a Kindle for Christmas and some fantasy books over the new year. Yes, for your birthday. Happy birthday. That's exciting. I also reread The Lightning Thief before I started watching the Percy Jackson TV show. I'm so happy to be immersed back in that world. Percy Jackson is on my TBR list for this year because I've never read it. It wasn't on my radar when I was younger, when I think other people were reading it. But I've heard a ton of people recommend it. And like recently I was looking for some like book recommendations from friends for this upcoming year, and a bunch of people mentioned it. So I'm hoping to give it a try this year. I think it's on all of our TBR this year. I haven't read them in years. Yeah, I think that there was a new book in the series that was just published at the end of last year, possibly. So it's like gotten a lot of attention again and people are talking about it. And I know people who read it a while ago and really liked it are coming back to it. And then I think there are also a lot of people like me who I've never read it, but I really am curious about it. So the 6th Percy Jackson book that came out last year, it's the first of a trilogy. Oh, okay. So it's like a separate book, but in the same series, in the same world. New book and new show. Oh yeah, there's also that new show. Is anyone watching the show? I will admit that I, on vacation, when I was with my partner and his family, we watched, I think, the first episode of the show. And I personally wouldn't watch more, but I'm curious about what other people think. I'm sort of picky when it comes to shows, especially like show adaptations of books. It seemed like not for me. But I think also maybe that's partly because I never read the books, so I didn't have like a connection with the story. But it seemed like Oh, it's really windy outside. I've watched the first 4 episodes so far. The acting and CGI is not great, but it's so faithful to the book. I have to support. Yeah, I feel like I have heard a lot of, I think I remember hearing that a lot of Percy Jackson fans did not like the movies because they were so different from the books. Again, I don't know. I didn't watch the movies and I've never read the books. But it sounded like that was the general consensus with the show, is that it's like exactly right on for the books, which I know like huge book fans would appreciate. But I think since I don't know anything about the books, when I watched the first episode, the acting was pretty for me. And so I was like, this doesn't look like my thing. Kitty, what are you doing? She's just back there exploring. We don't talk about the movies. The musical, however, is in my opinion the best adaptation. Oh my gosh, okay, I'll have to check it out. All right. Okay, next category in my 2023 wrap up is most impactful. So for this category, I tried to pick books that really stuck with me, that either taught me a lesson or made me think a lot. In reality, a lot of my books were very, very impactful. Like a lot of the other books that I've talked about throughout today have been really impactful. A lot of those like emotional books in particular, like I've read a lot of impactful books, but these were 3 sort of like standouts. So the first one I have is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. And this one, it's sort of hard to explain exactly. First of all, the book is phenomenal. The book is just so beautifully written. It is an incredible story. It's so creative. It's so cool. I really loved it. But I feel like the reason that it really stuck with me is like, I feel like the cafe in this story, like, I just think about it. Like sometimes randomly, I just think about it. It's hard to explain, but this one really stuck with me. It just felt, I don't know, it made me really think about my experiences and my relationships and time, and I don't know, I just really liked it. Next was In the Dream House. I think I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about it. This one just felt like the kind of book that like everyone should read, and I feel like I really learned things from it. And it really showcased a perspective that is just important. And it was really impactful to me for that reason. And then similarly, All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. This is a memoir. I think the author specifically describes it as a memoir manifesto, which is kind of interesting. And this also has, it's not in any way the same story as In the Dream House, but it's like the story of a young, like, Black person finding their identity, in particular their queer identity, and what that means. And it talks about a lot of like difficult aspects of that identity. And it's just a really important book. And I found it really impactful because of getting to learn about a perspective that's different than mine. And also what was so cool about this book is that it is written to a like younger reading level. So it's specifically meant to be accessible to younger people who need that representation. So I just thought it was like a really incredible and really impactful book. So those are my impactful ones. And y'all, you're never gonna believe it, but we did it. Okay, so we did it. That is the end of my presentation. What do we think about my first ever like presentation slide style thing on stream? Because I've never done that before, but it was really fun. Amazing roundup. I'm so glad y'all liked it. Again, huge thank you to my friends in Discord who offered suggestions for a lot of these categories. I think we included some from Bookie, Ariel, and Sage. Some of these category suggestions were really, like, they really got me thinking. So huge thank you for those. I really appreciate it. Thank you everyone for joining me for a year of reading. I know we started the Books with Bella stream partway through 2023, so we didn't get to there were some books that I read before we started this stream series, so this was kind of my first time talking about some of them on stream. But we got to share a lot of my 2023 reads together on stream, which is so cool, and just makes me really happy. So thank you for an incredible year of reading. It was really fun making that too. I think it was really cool to get to have an opportunity to really look closely at all of the books that I read this past year as a whole. And it made me realize there are some, in particular, there were some that I read at the beginning of the year that by the end of the year, I sort of had not thought about as much. And it was really nice to bring those back to the top of mind. So that was really cool. Loved it. I just went back through my 2023 reads, and one of my faves was Remarkably Bright Creatures. Ooh, I'll have to add that to my list. I'll add it to my list. 10 out of 10. I hope you do it again. I hope so too. Let's see if I remember next year. Oh, but yeah, this was really fun. So that concludes the 2023 wrap-up part. I have one final little part of our Books with Bella stream. If you'll have me for another, not nearly as long as the rest of it has taken. Thank you all so much for sharing your favorite books and different books that you've read and stuff like that, because it's really fun to get to connect in this way. So thanks. I think I may also already have read what's going to be my favorite book of 2024. Oh my gosh, that's exciting. Way to start out strong. I love that. So the last part of stream that I will be doing today is my my January TBR, or to be read. I don't know why, but it's my to read list of January. So this is what I do. This is something I do for every single month. This is part of our Books with Bella streams that are monthly. I personally really like to set a at the beginning of the month, I like to decide on a to read list for the month, just so that when I finish a book and I'm looking for a next one, I already have an idea of what to read. Otherwise, sometimes I will have no idea what to read and get overwhelmed and then just not pick up another book. So at the beginning of every month, I like to set a list, a short list of to read books. I usually don't read all of them, so I'll set a list of 7 or 8 books and only read maybe 5. So that's totally okay. It's not a pressure thing. for myself. But it's just like some books that I'm hoping to read. So I'm going to talk you through some of my books on my to read list for January. Usually for this part, I don't have a ton to say because I don't know a lot about the books that I'm going to read just yet. So I'll tell you a little bit about what I know. As always, we'll keep it spoiler free, but I really enjoy going into reading books knowing very little about them. So usually I'll learn just enough to get me interested, and then I'll stop learning and just read the book because I like to go in with very little information. So that's why this part is sort of like, I'll tell you about the books, but I won't have a lot to say. I have like 3 to 5 books on my TBR right now. I'm just restarting reading, so my TBR feels manageable. The top 3 are Elantris by Brandon Sanderson, which will be my first exposure to the Cosmere, the first Dresden Files book, and a Game of Thrones. Ooh, those are some big, like strong titles. That'll be good. My entire to read list is like hundreds and hundreds of books long. I keep track of my TBR on Storygraph, and it's absolutely massive, which I think is partly why I do these monthly TBRs, so that they can be manageable from month to month. So also, thank you so much for the follow. Welcome in. I appreciate it a lot. I really want to get into Game of Thrones. I'm not normally a mature story person, but I'm not normally a mature story guy, but I hear it's just so well written. I think I can make an exception. I have also thought about getting into Game of Thrones, but I'm a little intimidated because there's so much, like truly so much. I love Storygraph. Okay, so here's my January TBR. I have 9 books on my to read list for January. I very likely will not finish them all. Again, that's totally okay. I'm coming out of a reading slump, so I'm like really excited about books, so I have an overambitious TBR. It is what it is. Okay. First up, I have Siren Queen by Nevo, which I do have the physical copy of. This is our book club pick. So this is, if you're interested in joining book club, this is the book that we're reading in January. It's like medium length, like probably on the longer side. Usually the way that this works is we pick a book, we read it at our own pace, and then we discuss it together in Discord at the end of the month. So if you are interested, totally welcome to join. We haven't picked a date yet because we're like solidly in the middle of the month. So we'll decide when to discuss at the end of the month. I've heard this is sort of like dark Hollywood. So I'm really excited about this one. I haven't read it yet, but I'm really excited about it. I really like Nevo, so I think I'm gonna like it. Looking forward to discussing this one. Me too. I'm excited about it. So, the next one that I have on my to read list, The Empress of Salt and Fortune I also read that last year. That was my first exposure to Nevo, and it was so phenomenal, like so good. I loved that book. And that's like a novella, it's a much shorter than a full novel. So this is going to be my first like full length novel that I read of Nevo. So I'm really excited about it. But I loved The Empress of Salt and Fortune. Oh, so good. The next on my list is, I have a couple of arcs on my list. So I usually try to read a couple of arcs each month. If you're not familiar, ARCs stand for like advanced reader copy or advanced review copy, whatever. Basically, it is a book that folks can get before it's published, usually for the purpose of writing a review or doing some sort of promotion. I get ARCs for free in exchange for honest reviews that I publish on like my Storygraph, and I get them through NetGalley. So if you're also a reader and you write a lot of reviews and you're interested in doing this as well, check out NetGalley. It's really cool. It's free, 10 out of 10. And I get all digital copies of books, so I don't have to wait for them to be shipped to me. I can just read them on my Kindle, which is very convenient. And I like it. So I have a couple of arcs on my list. So first up is For Never and Always. I've had this arc for a little while. This was published in, I think, November. I can double check. I have all this information. I don't know why there it is. Okay, this was published on November 28th. It is a sequel. The first book was called... I read it, and I know it, and I'm still gonna have to look up the name. Seasons of Love. And this Seasons of Love was like a really cute romance novel, has some like holiday vibes. So this is also going to be a really cute romance novel. I've actually already read this one, but I'm going to save my thoughts on it for next month's Books with Bella, just in typical, because that's normally how I do it. But yeah, another arc. My next book is another arc. It is called Don't Want You Like a Best Friend by Emma R. Albin. And the information that I know about it is Sapphic and like Regency era something. So that's all I needed to know. I'm in. I also think my friend Bookie read this and I believe said really good things about it. So I'm very excited to read it. I've started this one, but I haven't finished it. This one was actually just published on January 9th. So it just came out. I'm really excited about it. So yeah, I can't read that title without thinking Taylor Swift lyrics. There was a book that I read, I think last year, that was like absolutely Taylor Swift lyrics. And I feel like it's like a trend right now to write Taylor Swift lyric book covers. But you know what? I'm not mad about it, okay? It is what it is. They're catchy. Oh my gosh. It's catchy. But yeah, I'm really excited about this one. Another arc that I have. The next one, another arc, is called Greta and Valden. This one will come out in February. It's published February 6th. So I really don't know much about this at all. I think this one also has queer something. And that's mostly all I know about it. I always get sucker. Look, this is my problem. If a book says queer, I'm like, yeah, I'll like that story. Yep. And like, usually that's true, but like, it is kind of silly that I'm kind of always like, oh yeah, let me just try it. If it's queer, I'm in. Anyways, so I know almost nothing about this book. Queer and the cover I think looks really, really cool, which is funny, but Sapphic, yep. Sapphic sucks me in, lesbian sold, yeah. I'm that way as well. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I'm excited about this one, but I really don't know much about it. Published February 6th. I have a couple other books. Lesbians and Dragons Take My Money. Incredible. I love that. So the next one that I have, this one was just like a random one that I picked up. I have the audiobook that I think I got the audiobook when I still had my Audible subscription. And I do not use Audible anymore. However, I have books on Audible that I like have access to through Audible, but I haven't read yet. So I'm listening to this one on Audible. So anyways, boo Audible, but yay audiobook. I like the audiobook for this. I don't know. This is the second Andy Weir book that I have read or am reading. So the first one that I read was The Martian and I really liked it. So I picked this one up because I liked The Martian. I'm partway through it already, but I won't say more until next year or till next month. But it's cool. It's similar to The Martian, but also slightly different vibes, which is cool. So yeah, that one is on my list. Hi, Kenny. I just stepped in a freezing cold puddle while wearing Crocs. No. So I hope things are better in here. Yeah, there's no freezing cold puddles here, but there are Crocs. Obviously, so. But no puddles here. I hope you're doing okay other than the puddle. That's a huge bummer. I'm so sorry. I hope you have warm socks waiting for you somewhere. I feel like I only see Hail Mary on people's favorites or people's most hated. Yeah, I've heard similar things where it's sort of like some people really like it and some people don't. I loved The Martian, so I feel like I like that style of book. But yeah. Kenny, get some fresh warm socks, please. I'm so sorry, buddy. Not fun. It's cold out today. Okay, the next book on my list is, we talked about the first in this book series in my 2023 wrap up. So this is a second book. It's called A Prayer for the Crown Shy. It's the book that comes after A Psalm for the Wild Built, it showed up a ton on my 2023 wrap up of like great stuff. It was in my like favorite quotes, just like in a lot of places. So I really like this series. I'm super excited to read the second one. I've had this book for a while and it's been like on my list of things that I want to read, and I just haven't found the right time for it. Because I feel like it's a book that I know that I'm gonna like. I'm absolutely sure that I will enjoy it. So I've been saving it for a time where I need a book that I will like. And so for some reason, sometimes I get to it and I'm like, I don't need this now. I'll save it for a time when I need it. But like I keep putting it off and I really want to read it. So I'm hoping I will read this one. Fresh oat milk latte. I also have an oat milk latte. It's not fresh. I made it this morning and it's cold. There's like half of it left. I don't know why I'm this way with coffee, but it was really tasty. The next one I have, this book I intended to read in November. And I was in so much of a reading slump that I really couldn't. But I really am excited. I have been super, super excited about this book. It's an anthology. So I'd like to at least start reading it this month, and at least read like a couple of the stories in it. So this is Never Whistle at Night, an Indigenous dark fiction and anthology. I'm sort of excited about some like dark fiction stuff, cause why not? So yeah, I'm really, really, really excited for this one. Also, the cover's so pretty. I think this cover is just so cool. So that's on my list. Usually when I like start books, I intend to start and finish them within the same month because it makes it easier to talk about on our Books with Bella streams, which is sort of a silly reason. But this one I am allowing myself, I'm saying it now, it's okay if I start it this month, but then don't finish it also this month. I just want to make sure that I read at least one or two stories from it because I've been like really excited about it, but I keep being intimidated by, I don't know. So anyways, that one. And then the last book on my to read for this month, this has been on my to read a couple of times and it got unlucky and was, I got it while I was in a reading slump. Not the book's fault, my fault, but I started reading this one already and I'm really excited to finish it. This is nonfiction. It's called The Little Book of Aliens by Adam Frank, and it's about space and aliens. So I'm sort of excited to have, like, I'm reading Hail Mary, Project Hail Mary, which is a fiction space book. So I'm excited to have a nonfiction space book as well. But I actually got this book. This was so exciting for me. I got this book for free from the publisher. So I really would like to read it and get to be able to tell y'all what I think about it. Also, I love the cover. Like, I don't know if you can tell, but the title and the like moon kind of thing around it, it's like not sparkly, but I don't know. It's like rainbow spark. I don't know what the word is for that. I can't think of it, but it's so pretty. Holographic. Thank you, Sage. You get it. It's holographic and it's so pretty. And it's just really cool. I'm really excited to finish that book and finally get to tell you what I think about it. But yeah, okay, those are all of my books that I have on my to read for January. Like I said, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 books. And I have been averaging fewer than 9 each month. So I really don't think that I've finished one of these and started several of them. But I am not on track to finish all 9 of these by the end of the month. So I very likely will not hit 9. But that is okay. I will read some of them and that will be great. So that is my plan. But yeah, we did it. Okay, we did it. Hoo-wee. So anyways, we have officially come to the end of my like planned Books with Bella stream content. Thank you so much for your patience today. We talked about so much. I feel like oftentimes the Books with Bella streams go kind of long, but I feel like this one went quite long. Thank you so much for going through my 2023 wrap up with me. That was so fun. It was really fun to make. And this has been super, super, super fun.